We'll record it. So right now I am at my GitHub. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. And I'm going to name this server. You can name your server template. I'm going to name mine server template 2. If I could spell.
So we're creating a new repository from scratch?
Yep.
Okay.
And just don't initialize it with, actually, see where it says the add to get ignore here? You can add that here. And it allows you to pick what you're doing. So we are doing node. So we can scroll down or probably just type in node. Which node isn't on the list, imagine that. Okay, forget that.
Well, node is on the list. I just searched it.
Yeah.
Oh, is it there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is. We're gonna make a node get ignore. Because that's what we're using. All right, and everybody's here. We're gonna go ahead and create that repository.
Okay.
We have it. Take a look in there real quick, see what it puts in there for us. All right, I like it. They got comments in here. The main thing that we're looking for to make sure it has is obviously the node modules, JSMP, ESLint's a good one to have, and there's one for the Mac users that you want to have in here too. .env is a good one. That's going to come in later when you start using environment variables. You never want to put them up to source control, so it's putting that in for us already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mac users, you're going to add one called, oh, what is that? Let me find it. I'll find it in a second here. We'll get this rolling, but it's got pretty much everything we need to get ignore in here. And on a lot of the other packages that you install, like dependencies you might have, it'll automatically add to the get ignore if it needs to be there. Like if it's an industry standard to ignore those files, it'll add that stuff there. But that's pretty much what we have. So if we go back over here, we've got that. We're going to go ahead and clone this. Make sure I copy that. And then we're going to open our terminal. And it's just like any other Lambda project. We're going to, then I didn't want to do that. We're going to get clone and that link. Oh, it already exists on my computer. Let me fix that real quick. I don't need that. Where's that? Server template 2. We're going to delete that.
I'm sorry, I'm just now catching up. Do we have to do anything different about setting up our GitHub repository?
As far as?
From how we normally set up our repository when we make a new one.
You're going to add the get ignore file to it.
Okay.
There's let me see if I can hit the backspace here and show you. Yeah, right here where it says get ignore none.
Here, sorry. Ignore me, I need to make this bigger. Where's the, okay, I see it, thank you.
Yeah, you click that and to search for node. And that's the one you're going to add. Yeah, I must have that open. I do have it open. Okay, so I can close that. And let me go ahead and back in here and finish deleting this. So we can do the clone. All right. All right. Now we're going to do our get clone. The server template. And everybody let me know when they're at this point.
I'm good.
I'm creating my repository right now. I'm cloning it. Oops.
Was that just the garage door?
Sounded like a dryer.
Pam, did you just open the garage door?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
You gotta get a chance to this closed.
Once we cloned this,
Mm-hmm.
did we need to do anything else special?
No, we're going to CD into it and open it with VS Code.
Okay. I'm there.
All right.
Um,
And we don't have to worry about creating a separate branch or anything here because this is ours in a template. We'll just end up pushing it right to master when we get it done. So just open it with code. And we're going to take a look at the project here. And you can see it is bare bones. All we have in here is the get ignore. And I'm going to tell you what other file we need to add to that get ignore for the Mac users. We find it here. I saw it on one of the other projects. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Get ignore. Yep. Okay, I'm going to add this in here if it didn't come with it. I don't see it in here anywhere. No, okay, this is it's called a DS store.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's pound. And that's for just basically Mac files. And you probably see it in your projects too.
Wait a minute. Are you, which file? Oh, you're in the get ignore file.
Yeah, and we're just adding this for the Mac users because you don't want this stuff going up to source control either.
Oh yeah, that's me.
And this also gives you a good get ignore file to start with too. Like whenever you use this repository or you're going to clone something into it, you have a good start and it's set up for your machine. And you can always reference back to it. So if you're in something else and you see that something's missing that you think you need, you can always add it to that get ignore file too.
Nice. Can you make the screen just a little bit bigger?
Yeah, let me see here.
Like, for instance, I can't read if that's term or turn.
I mean, I gotta remember how to do it.
I think it's Control plus to make the text.
That's what I'm pushing out. There it goes.
Yeah.
There you go.
How about that?
Thank you. That's perfect. Also doesn't help. I'm just dog tired because I've had a weekend of back end.
Okay, go get it.
Okay, for database store. So we added the turn.js port file and the Mac files, correct?
Turn was already there for me, but Mac files you wanted to add if you're a Mac user.
Okay.
All right. Let me know when everybody's there.
I'm there.
All right. Now we're gonna start in our terminal because what we're gonna do now is we're gonna initialize it. This is where our package JSON comes from. And the npm command for that is npm init and then -y. And the -y is there because it's going to ask you a series of probably like 10 or 15 questions. You're going to want to answer yes to them all. So this just predetermines, yes, my answer is yes, just go ahead and run it.
Nice.
And we're going to run that, and you can see it even shows you a preview of the package JSON that it installed. And we can go ahead and take a look at that too. So let's go ahead and take a look at the package JSON. So this is what we started with. And it gives us the name already by our file name. Gives us our version. Tells us what the main files are going to be. This is all stuff that we don't have to change because this is the way we are taught to build it.
Right.
It also gives you where it came from as far as your GitHub repositories and stuff. we're going to add a couple of things to this first off. Right here in scripts. The scripts tag is what allows us to run npm commands on the package JSON. So like, when you type in npm run server, there's actually a script in here that's labeled server that it runs. And then like when you have, remember when we were doing the React projects, how you put in like yarn start? There was actually a script in here called start that would start that server. So what we're going to do is, since we're already here, we're going to add the two that we need. So it's going to be comma space in scripts. Our first one's going to be server. And what server is going to do, now the package isn't installed yet because we haven't installed any packages, but it's going to run a program called nodemon. And nodemon's going to look for the index.js file to run. And nodemon, what that does, that's our automatically refreshing server that we're running. As we're building the server and we want to see it just automatically keep running and we're hitting it with our Postman or our Insomnia program, that's what we're doing. And my son's going to see the new Doolittle movie with Grandma. So I wish I could go. And we're going to add one more to this also called start. Start we're probably not going to use right away, but it's good to have there for production. They're having us starting to put it in some of our projects, just so it's prepared. And start's just going to run node rather than nodemon. And it's also going to look for the index.js. And this is mainly for deployment. When you deploy to Heroku and Heroku runs its build, it looks for the start command, and the start tells it what it's going to run and build and deploy. So, and that's why that's there. So let me know when you all get to this point.
I'm there.
We're there?
Yep.
We're there.
All right, now we're going back to our terminal and trying to add our dependencies that we're going to need. Some good boilerplate dependencies. I'm going to add them one at a time so everybody can follow. First thing we're going to add is Express, because we use Express through Node to build our server. All right, everybody got Express?
Yep.
All right, then we're gonna add one called knex, K-N-E-X.
I had this thing, and I've ignored it because last time it did bad things. That popped up. It says new patch version of npm available. Run npm install -g npm to update.
In your situation, I would not do that with all your npm issues that you've had.
Yeah.
If it's working, leave it alone.
Okay. That's why it popped up during an assignment. I was like, no, I don't have enough data to do.
I would normally say it's always good to get to the latest versions of everything, especially npm, because the bug fixes and all the stuff that comes with the packages. But I know you've had issues with it just randomly not working and you finally got it. I would wait and maybe run that when you have some extra time. So like if you do it on like a weekend and run it, and if everything still works and it's cool, that's fine. But if not, you can always go through all the steps that you went through last time to get it back before it really creates a problem on a project that's time sensitive.
Yeah. That took even Louise like a couple of hours to noodle through.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, we wouldn't update anything as of yet unless you've got some time on your hands.
Okay. We bonded, but I'd rather not do that again.
Right. So we're going to install knex. Now, and here's the other thing. If you don't have knex globally installed, you want to install it globally. So, and the reason why you're going to install it globally is because you want the command line tools that we're going to be using today. So I've already got it installed globally, but you're going to do -g knex.
Can I do that a second time then?
Yes, you sure can. It just dawned on me about that you don't have access to the command line tools unless it's a global install.
Okay.
So once you have that installed globally, we're good. We'll get that running. And you'll see why when we go to build a database, why that's got to be global.
Did you just knex? Okay, so you just did knex the second time.
Yeah, I didn't do it the first time because I already had it globally installed. I just want to, if you installed it globally, it should have been. And if you're ever wondering, like when you're running one of these commands, whether it's installed or not on the project, just look at the package JSON. It'll tell you whether it's there or not. So you can see we've installed Express and knex.
Gotcha.
All right, the other thing we're going to need is npm I, and that's SQLite 3. Now this is going to be subject to change with Postgres, but this allows us for development reasons right now until Luis changes or decides to do development with Postgres. It allows us to use a permanent file locally as a database file to run and test our code. When we deploy this, the same commands that we use for SQLite 3, if they're written properly, will coincide with Postgres and allow us to run that Postgres instance when we deploy. So, but we're going to go ahead and we're just going to put SQLite 3 in here because that's what we're going to use today.
Is there a reason why we're using npm I instead of add for the dependencies?
Yeah, because add is a yarn command.
Okay.
So npm I is the same as yarn add. That's the change that they have.
Gotcha.
Like one, I believe it's yarn when you want to like update it or upgrade a package. I think yarn is update, but npm is upgrade.
Gotcha.
So you got to be careful. You got to look at, depending on what package manager you're using, you need to look at their docs and see which command it is. So we have, where did I leave off? Okay, we got SQLite 3. Now I'm going to install one more, which is called cores, not cars, cores. And then what this does is the cross-origin communication from server to server. I know if you guys remember build weeks where you were trying to ping a back end and it would say, you know, cores error, cannot talk. The reason why it says cores error is because that back end is hosted on a server, basically. And when we're running our React apps at the time, we're running a server on our local machine, that local host 3000. That's not deployed, that's a server. And what that sees, the browser sees a server-to-server communication, which is not allowed. That's like a violation of the cores security. So I put cores in everything just to get a practice with it, for the simple fact that you're going to need it if you use cookies to set your cookie files up. And you're also going to need it for build weeks so your front-end people can talk to the back-end and do testing. So it's just good to be getting a habit of putting it in every time. All right, so, and we got one more, which is NodeMon. I'll put NodeMon in here. And I cannot remember the flag, so I'm not going to use it, but there's a way to put it in as a dev dependency in package JSON. But what I always do is I just write my own dev dependency in package JSON, which we're going to do, and I just move it there. So let me know when everybody's got all those installed.
Okay, it's just npm I nodemon, N-O-D-E-M-A-N.
Yep, M-O-N. N-O-D-M-O-N.
Ooh. I have been saying nodeman instead of nodemon.
Just erase it out of the package JSON. Or you can type in, I believe it's npm uninstall, and it'll take it out too.
Uninstall. I would do npm uninstall.
NodeMan. See if that works.
Yep. Okay, now do that. Okay. npm I nodemon, npm I
All that.
N-O-D-E-M-O-N.
Yep. Okay, let me know when everybody's at that point, and we'll fix up our package JSON here.
Sugar and spice. Should I have been using node mon for everything?
What do you mean?
Because I'm looking
Calling
at,
node man for everything?
so for a server, it says it's server colon node man index.js.
No, it should be node mon.
Okay. I've done install that now too.
No, you should just be able to change it in here and you know, just change the A to an O
Okay.
and then save it. And you should see this dependency at the moment right now and your dependencies object of your package JSON.
I've got that node mon 202.
Yep.
Just like yours. Servers node mon. Were those the only two commands we used node mon?
We use nodemon on server and we use node on start.
Okay. I've got both those. I'm there. Thank you. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Now we're going to add something at the bottom of dependencies here, and this is going to be dev dependencies. And what we're going to basically do is we're going to cut nodemon out, and we're going to put it in here, minus the comma. Basically, just make it look like that.
Where did you cut that out from?
I cut it out of the dependencies, and I put it in a new object I created called dev dependencies.
Oh. This is here. And then get rid of the extra comma. I've got it. Thank you.
Everybody there?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Now let's. We're going to create a couple files. We're going to start a file structure here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new file in here. Oh, what did I just do? New file, and this is going to be index.js. This is what. This is the first file that everything sees. This is the main file. So when you deploy or when you're running like nodemon or anything like that, the deployment looks here first. And in here is normally where you keep your project here. This is where you keep like I don't even think you keep Express in here. You keep that in the server. Give me just a second here. Let me find the right one. Okay, so like in index.js, you'd have the server that you import in when you create a server file. And this is where your .env for the port will be, and where the server.listen command is going to be is right here. So we're going to create another file in here as well, and we're going to call this server.js. This is basically, it's our middleman. It's our go-between between our routes and our index.js file. It can have some general middleware in it for certain endpoints. It's where we're going to import all of our routes for our different databases. That's where this magic happens. So we can start writing a little code in here. We'll go ahead and get it going. We're going to start with index.js. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We're going to start with server.js. Let's get that going first. Let's start setting up our server. So first thing we're going to do in our server file is we're going to make our server. Equals require. And we're going to get Express.
That's quiet. Think that's quiet. Think that's quiet.
All right. Let me know when we got that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then we're going to set up another, we'll give an extra line. We're going to set up const server. That's going to equal Express. Invoked. So now we just made a variable called server that uses express. All right, and there's one very important thing to make everything we got work that a lot of people forget, and we got to tell it to, we're going to use our first.use command. We want our server to use JSON. So we're going to do that, and that's our communication. And I don't know if any of you run into it yet in projects where you're trying to make API endpoint calls and you're getting that weird error and it's saying, I can't do anything. It's because we're sending it JSON and we haven't told it to accept JSON yet.
Yep,
Yeah.
happened to me.
Happened to me too.
So now that we have that, the last thing we do is we got to export this, which is module.exports. We're going to set that equal to our server. So now we're exporting that server. And at this moment, we will be done in this file. So let me know if you got any questions and when you catch up. Oh, actually, we're not done. I'm going to add one more thing in here. Right below the express JSON, we're going to tell the server to use cores.
Oh, nice.
See, I almost forgot too. And my React team would have been mad at me.
What kind of error message would you get if you don't have cores installed?
When you try and talk to it, like on when you're running like a yarn start, like a server instance of your front end, it'll say cores error, cannot communicate with the endpoint. You know, must enable cores. Some people were installing extensions in Chrome to get around it for using, you know, existing backends. When truthfully, it is literally this half a line of code makes all that go away.
Thank you.
So, you say that, let's go into our index. This is the part where we're going to start making it talk. I'll be able to talk to it anyway. In our index, we're going to set up our first const, and we're going to make it a server. And we're going to require our server. And that is from server in the file path. After that, we're going to make another const, and we're going to call this port, all capitals. This is going to be an environment variable, .env, and it's, I guess, convention, good practice, however you want to word it, to use all caps, kind of like we did with the actions when we're using Redux. So we're going to make the port equal to, and this is called process.env.port. And you see how it matches. And what this does is when we go to deploy, it's going to tell the server to use the environment variables, whether it supplies it or we supply it, the environment variables on the deployment, to specify this port. Otherwise, for development, we're going to use port 5000. And that's basically what that's doing. So we're going to use 5000 while we're in our development phase. But when we deploy this, obviously Heroku or wherever we deploy it to, they're going to pick whatever port they want it to run on. It's their server at that point. So this tells it, okay, go ahead and use whatever port you specify by the environment variable. And our last one is going to be what makes it all work. We're going to have it listen. And this is a callback function. We're going to give it the port because...
Hey guys, I got to run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. So we're going to give it the port, and the other one is the callback function. And the callback, all we're going to do in this callback is we're going to console log ourselves to tell ourselves what port it's running on. We're going to console.log, and we use a literal string. We can say server is running on port, and then the old $ curly port. And the reason for this is port is assigned an environment variable. So let's say you are deploying this on Heroku and you can see the Heroku logs. as it's running and building everything. And just out of curiosity, you want to know what port Heroku's got it on. I don't know of a reason to know that specifically yet, but as it runs its build and it deploys, this console log will show up on your Heroku deployment, telling you what port Heroku put it on, because we defined it like this.
Nice.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the end of that file. So now with these two running, just to verify it's working, we can go into our terminal and let's see if it works. We're going to type in npm run server. And we should see it running on port 5000. Oh, we crashed. What happened here?
You forgot the env dependency.
Yes, I did, didn't I?
It says .listen. Did we get the same error?
Cores is not defined.
I got a different error.
Why am I getting a server.use cores? If cores is defined, I installed it, did I not?
How do we start the server?
npm run server.
It's weird.
Okay.
Why is it saying cores isn't defined? Did I mistype something in there?
You guys must have mistyped something because my server's running.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I'm trying to figure out. Cores. Let's comment it out and see if it runs.
'Cause it's on
I know what I did. I'm pretty sure I know what I did. I didn't require cores first. Cores equals require. We're gonna require cores.
I don't have that in my running.
Now let's see if it worked. Hey, look, we're all better now.
Well, why is mine running then? Because I didn't do that.
I'm not sure. Maybe it automatically imported it. See if this requires up here. And if you're using cores and it's invoked and you didn't have it imported, it should have thrown an error.
Mm-mm.
Mine's running as well, but I was getting a different error. It was the terminal was telling me that server.listen is not a function.
That's new.
Yeah,
What'd you do to fix it?
I imported cores like you did, and it worked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
I would go ahead and put this in, Denise, just to be safe, because it looks like it's throwing random errors.
Yeah. Throwing random errors have nothing to do with the actual error or the actual cause. It's weird.
Okay, so we are up and running. Let me know when everybody's caught up and we're running.
Okay, I'm just adding a little note about that. Add const cores. CORS. Require. I've been doing this all weekend long. All right, I am there. Is
Okay.
John with us?
He had to go to the bathroom. I mean, if you want, we can give him a couple minutes and let him come back. Anybody want to take a break? It's up to you guys.
I don't mind.
All right. The only thing I'm really going to add to this boilerplate is I'm going to add our first router file. And I'm just going to call it, you know, boiler router, because you're going to change the name of it when you start working. But at least this way, you have something to reference on how router is invoked, basically.
Okay.
And then after that, we're going to build a database. And then we'll end up changing the name of that router.
Are we adding a router file, or are we just adding the router to this server.js?
All routes should be in a file.
Okay.
Basically, especially when you're using multi-table databases. Let's say we have a database that has users and products and stuff. You're going to have a file for users. You're going to have a file for products. And you're going to have a file for something else. And inside that file is going to have your router which is your actual endpoint calls. And it's also going to have a file called model. And the model is your SQL query calls to the database.
Okay.
And you keep those together, but keep them in separate files because you want each one of those files to tie to the database that you're wanting to call with that.
Gotcha.
Wherever it's relevant, basically, by endpoint more than anything else, by URI.
And was it just for a reason of simplicity? Because I feel like before we didn't always have a server JS file. We were just using index.js and we were adding everything in the index. And then we started playing with the server JS.
Correct. Yeah, they started us out with just using index just to get us used to it. And now they're breaking it out into more and more files as we go through this.
Gotcha.
And I think it's just simplicity to keep it from getting an extensive, massively long, 1,000-line of code file.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I use router, because truthfully, you don't need router. You could write every one of those endpoint calls, all that stuff in one file, but it's going to be big.
That's what I noticed.
Yeah. So it's one of those where you just start breaking it up into files, so it's easy to navigate when you got to change stuff or do things.
Gotcha.
Like in here in server, this is where we'd be importing our routes. We're only going to have one for this, but we could have several depending on how big your database is. You can have a lot going on in here. And then you're just going to tell the server to use whichever endpoint it is. And that's all that'll be in here other than some general middleware.
Gotcha.
Like your logger middleware would go in here and things like that. So it's, and the index file, from what I understand, that's just basically telling it the port and where to run it at. And a lot of this is probably for security issues too. If somebody's trying to hack your stuff, everybody knows index.js is the main file that everything looks for. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to get some sensitive things, they always look for index. Although server is a pretty general name itself too, but you do have to go deeper to get to it.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, I'm still working on the custom middleware. I'm just about wrapping that up.
Okay. Yeah, what's funny is every project I've done since then, now granted I haven't done any sprint challenges yet, I haven't used middleware, but one time I used it for authentication with the cookies and the session storage.
Right.
By the way, Denise, I learned about session storage and your problem with Build Week.
Yes.
All he had to do is give you one object to add to your Axios endpoint, you'd have been fine.
Yeah. No, we're not.
It worked Axios with all. I learned about it. I was like, that was it.
I was madder than a wet hen. And then to encounter it with a second back end who is supposed to oh yeah.
Well, the funny thing is they say the JSON web token's more secure, and truthfully, it was easier. It was so much easier to put the JSON web token in there than it was to actually set up the session storage with cookies and cores. And you can actually get really carried away. If you wanted to be super secure with your authentication, you can use a JSON web token and send it as a cookie.
And see, when we get to that, I'm just going to document it because that's my pinky swear that I will be a better back end and explain things. Like I did that with my React 1. Even though she wasn't doing the work, I still walked her through. These are the changes that I'm making, and here's why. So she would have a better understanding.
Yeah, I mean, and sure, I'd document it and just try and help. And just everybody that's had that bad back-end experience up to this point in the curriculum, remember that when you go to do your back-end. Yeah. And when you're actually working on Build Week with those people that were in your shoes a month ago.
Oh, yes.
And I would recommend, truthfully, because all they teach us in React is JSON web tokens, use the JSON web token. Just don't even bother with the cookies or the session storage. Don't try and be cute with it. Choose a web token, make their life easy. And as I'm noticing too, look at the MVP of the project, figure out your database and your endpoints you're going to need, and discuss that with the React team. That here's the endpoints I'm going to supply. Do you guys need anything extra? Do that first off.
Mm-hmm.
When you build your database, if they need an extra field, because adding an endpoint to get to data isn't a big deal. But if you had to add like an extra like name section to a database or something like that, and it's working off of 2 foreign keys, you're going to have to rebuild most of the database to accommodate them for that. And you don't want to do that again. So you want to get that set up front.
Like, for example, let's say they wanted like an extra key value pair. That's going to be like a hassle to implement that.
That's going to be an extra column in the database. If it messes with one of your foreign keys, you're going to have to rewrite multiple databases. So you'll have to add to the migration file. You'll have to remove the seeds. You'll have to roll everything back out of the database. You'll have to run the latest command again, test it, make sure it works, reseed the database, and redeploy it to add that field.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And that was the one good build week experience that I had was the back end started off exactly like that. At first I thought, wow, why is she being so spastic about it? And she said, you guys need to give me your fields, and once you decide that, it's not changing.
Pretty much. And that's why.
And we all sat down. That was like our first hour. We barely even did the what they call it, the icebreaker. Our icebreaker was, you guys need to figure out what fields you need to give me, and then it's not changing. And then she had to serve her up by Monday morning.
Nice.
So she's my role model.
John's back. John, you're going to want to type the command in if you didn't see it yet, where you got to require the cores.
Yeah, I just typed that in.
Cool. And fire up your server.
Yeah, I did. I'm getting some errors. Let's see here. My dog's barking at the washing machine. Sorry.
And my dog just perked up because I heard that dog. All right. Let me know if you get your errors fixed or you need help, John. We all should be running on the port.
Was he here for the index? Does he have the index.js?
Did you do index, John? You got this?
Yes, I do have that.
Oh, okay.
All right. So you got server listen port, and it's running on the port.
Yep.
What's your error say?
Let's see.
Looks like it's running now.
Error invalid argument value or invalid arg value options.
Do you want to do a screen share?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, share your screen. Let's see what you got.
I'm feeling minorly confident that I can debug stuff since I've spent all week doing this. Let's see the require server.
Make this a little bit bigger.
Port. After the process dot environment, you need a dot port.
Yep.
Line 3.
And process.env.port all caps.
Dad just spent 4 hours looking for one bracket on Saturday.
Oh, so line 5, you have port all lowercase.
Yeah, right there.
There we go.
Hey, we're running. All right, so everybody's got a running server.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm going to continue the share.
Thank you.
So next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our first router file. And it's going to be a folder. And this is going to be a temporary name because we're going to change the name. This is going to be relational to the database wherever we're working on. So right now, let's just call it the router file or router folder.
File or folder?
It'd be a folder because we're going to end up with normally 2 files in each one of these. All right. So we're going to add a new file in here. We'll call it router, basically router-router. Because whatever this will end up being, like if you're dealing with users, it'll be users, router, or so on and so forth. And it's a JavaScript file. And then we're going to have one more on top of that. That's going to be router model. So these two files in here, so basically this would be whatever database we're trying to talk to. The model would be the SQL commands to talk to that database that we're going to return the information from. And then our router is going to be the URI endpoints that runs our middleware and our rec and res functions and stuff that actually talk with the front end or whatever's trying to talk with the server. So at this point here, now that our server's running and we have these two files in here in place, we're going to go ahead and just create our normal little imports. In our router model, this is where we'll be writing our database stuff. We're going to start with a file called knex. So we're going to call it knex, and we're going to set that equal to require knex.
What is knex?
Knex is what controls the database communication.
Gotcha.
And after this, we actually have to run a command line command to do the rest of it. I'll go over that too. So we're going to stop our server. Let me know when everybody's got this, and we'll run this knex command.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the command on the command line is going to be knex init. And that's going to create a knex.js file when you run that.
K-N-E-X.
Space I-N-I-T.
I-N-I-T. Thank you.
And what the knex file is that's what controls our migrations and seeds for our database and tells it how to communicate. So if you click in that knex file, you're going to see all kinds of stuff here. And we don't need any of it but the development part. So basically from here down, you can remove it, where it just says this. And then we're going to add a couple of things in here as well.
Okay, so develop.
Now, some of this stuff, matter of fact, right about this point, no, we can fill this out with a little bit of descriptions, and then we will push it up, and it'll be the end of your boilerplate, basically. And after this, we're going to start building something out, but it'll be the end of the boilerplate. So your client's going to be SQLite 3 in this knex file. You're going to want to add a field to this called use null as default. You're going to set that to true. And what this does is it eliminates those pesky SQLite 3 errors that you have where it's saying returned is not a function with SQLite 3. It's like a little warning that pops up on your console. It'll still run without it, but it's annoying. So you just put this in here and it goes away. And okay, so we have that. We have the connection. This is going to be the name of your database. And it's not going to be dev SQLite 3. Normally, this is going to be in a separate folder called data. And you would name it like how can I do this where we can reuse it? Let's just say we're going to build a website called our users. And the file extension is not SQLite 3. That throws a lot of people off. It's DB3. So we'll call this, we're going to label this as name for now. And I want to put a little, can I put a comment beside this? Actually, no, we'll put a new line. We're going to add a comment in here. And we're going to call this location and name of the database. So our location is it's going to be in data / something DB3. The name is obviously going to be the name. So that way we have a comment in our boilerplate knowing what this field does. Let's see here, what else we're going to add to that. That pretty much does that. Now, the database requires one thing, and it's called migrations. That's what you use to actually create the database. So that's going to add into this development object, and it's literally called migrations. And it's going to be an object. And we give it a directory of where the migrations are going to live. And the directory is going to be here. Oh, I forgot the / up here. Don't forget the / on data. It's going to be data / migrations. So if you look at projects and you see that data folder where it has migrations and seeds in it and stuff, this is where it comes from. We actually don't create those folders manually. When we run our knex commands on the command line, it's automatically going to generate those for us by these paths in this JSON file.
So if this is the end of our boilerplate, is there an easy peasy way to just save a copy of this file before we start doing more to it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let me put a comment in here. Location of migrations. I can't type today. And then we're going to put one more in here. And it's going to be seeds. And what seeds are basically default data that you put in a database. So, I mean, like seeds, you can have that in production too to seed the database. So like if you have something like existing data you want there, or you want it as test data, this is where you put that. And you're just going to put a location in here for it, by the way. It's going to be just given in a directory. The directory object is going to tell it where to, oh, I'm sorry, not an object. What am I doing? Seeds is an object. And we're going to tell it to go to data seeds. And we'll put a comment in here, and this is location of seed data for the database. Let me know when everybody's here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll save this file, and we're done in here for now. We're going to go back into our router model file.
Somewhere, something I'm getting yelled at.
Probably because we've added stuff. I've got my server shut down at the moment. We'll fire it back up when we get done and make sure it runs.
Oh, I think I'm missing a parens.
What's that?
A curly bracket. I was missing a curly bracket.
Oh, you're getting a little red squiggly, were you?
Yeah, it's good now. I fixed it.
All right. Let's go back into our router model where we just did the knex require knex. We are going to add a couple more things to this. Now we're going to make another variable called knex config. And it's basically the knex configuration. Config. We're going to set that equal to, we're going to require. And we're going to require that knex file that we just made. We're setting that to a variable in here because that's our configuration for our knex. That's how we want our stuff to talk to the database. That's what we want it to use. That's how it's going to speak to it. It's going to tell it it's got an SQLite 3 server. It's going to tell it where the seeds are, where the migrations are, all that stuff. And then we're just going to make one more const, which is we'll call this database, because this is the database variable that we're going to use to talk to it. This is going to be knex. Knex is now invoked as a function, and we're going to call knex config. That's that variable we set up right here. And we're going to tell it to look for the development portion of it. So basically, we're pointing this database variable to that config.development that's in this knex file right here. We're telling it to go here. Is what we're doing. Okay, so once we have that, this is ready. The only thing you have left is we're going to put a module exports file under here. And what that's going to be is the names of all the database functions that you're going to write. So in here, we'll just put like a little comment right now as names of database functions. So like when you have that the find by ID, the insert, the delete, the update. This is where we export all them. We're going to have them written in the exports, and we're actually going to be writing those functions one by one in here to talk to the database. But this way you know where they are. All right, and that's the model. And let's check our router. All right, we're going to put a couple of boiler things in the router too. We're going to set up a const router. We're going to set that equal to require. And we're going to require express again. But we're going to change something to the end of this. We're going to change the command called router with a capital R and invoke it. So rather than setting up a separate variable and going through all that nonsense, we already know this is a router. It's in a router file. We can require express and chain the router method of express right onto it in one command here. So this basically makes it a router. And then at the basically the only other thing you're going to be returning out of here at the moment is you're going to have a module exports. We're going to set that equal to the router. So when we're done writing our router files, we're going to basically export that, depending on what it is, and import that into our server file by the relative URI that we want to use for this specific part of it. And at that point, when everybody's caught up, that is done. We are boilerplated.
Nice.
So now go back into your, matter of fact, let's make sure we're running. See if we got any errors. No, we have a functional server. We got no errors. Nobody's got any errors, right?
Nope, I'm good.
Nope.
All right. So let's do a get add. A get commit. Send it a message called, I don't know, boilerplate. Boilerplate template. And then you're just going to push this right to master. And this way you have your boilerplate now saved on your local machine. And we are going to verify that our boilerplate is good on GitHub. We have a router file. We have everything there. We are good to go. So now if our system crashes, we still got our boilerplate here. Now that we're done, it's time to create a project.
But are we going to create the copy first?
Yep, we're going to do that right now. So the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and click your clone or download button here and click a copy of it. After you're done, merge to master, everything's good. Now that we have that copy on the clipboard, we're just going to go into our repositories. We're gonna make a new one because it's a new project, and we'll call this MLK Fun. Why not? I'm sorry, wait, don't even bother typing that in, because the next move you're gonna make is to click this import a repository link up here.
Okay, just
Okay.
I'm catching up.
Yeah, let me know when everybody's here to click on the link.
I'm on GitHub and I'm doing my merge. Okay, there's that. Okay, so you said once we did our merge,
Yep.
then we do a clone?
Yep, you're gonna clone that template. So every time you want to use this template on a new project, you're gonna come into the template and you're gonna click the clone button. Or the copy that URI to the clipboard.
Okay, so we copy to the clipboard.
Then we're gonna go back into our repositories, because we're gonna make a new project, so we're gonna want a new repository.
Okay, so go to repositories, new repository.
And then when we're in new repository, we want to use our template to start us off. So we're gonna import that repository by this link right here. We're gonna click on that.
And then what did you name the repository?
We haven't named anything yet. I worked too far ahead. You just want to click that, with all this empty, you just want to click on this import a repository link.
Okay.
And this is where we're going to put our URI for our template.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to give it our new name.
Okay.
MLK Fun. And then once everybody's there, you click Begin Import. And it'll say preparing. It does not, at least mine doesn't. It normally doesn't redirect me out of this for some reason. But if I go back to my repositories now, sometimes it takes a little bit. And if you go back to your repositories, you can see MLK Fun just popped up. And if we click in there, it's still working on it. It's just moving extra slow today. It's normally good by now.
Yeah, mine is preparing your new repository.
Yep,
Yeah.
mine's
Oh, and there it is. Mine just came in. And if you look, it's got all of our files from our template. But now we have our Git tracking and everything for this new project. So we can feel free to go in here, change names, do whatever we got to do, and build a project out with this template.
So I have a question. Do you know how during build week our project leads have our repositories already set up? How would I import the template to an existing repository instead of having to create one?
I've never had to do that, to be honest with you. As far as import it into an existing, I haven't tried that yet. At that point, the best I could tell you would be to copy and paste off of your local machine and do it that way. I mean, I'm sure there's a way, but you're probably going to have to, you'd have to probably set a downstream to it and then pull it in from the origin and then reset the upstream back to the other one. It might get a little complicated for the build week at that point. So you'd probably be better off just copy and pasting the files that you know you already have that are good to go. So, all right. So everybody at this point?
Yeah.
Still. Okay. Yeah, now I'm there.
Everybody's there? All right. Now we're just going to start this off just like we would any other project. We're going to clone this. And we're going to open our terminal up. Make sure we're at our, wherever your working file is that you want to put it in. And you're just going to type in git clone. And you're going to clone that in there.
So now we're starting on a new file, right?
Yeah. Now this would be our project file. We're no longer in the template. That template's there for reuse for later.
Okay.
Every time we need to do that, if we're creating a new project from scratch, this is how we would go about it. You basically just import that repository into one that has the name of your project, and then you would clone that in so you could work on it on your computer.
So we don't have to go through the process of creating a new repository for a new project?
No, the import did it when we did
Gotcha.
that. And we gave it a name that generated the new repository.
And then I'm just thinking about the folder name,
Uh-huh.
because when we do the git clone, it'll have the folder name of whatever our boilerplate is. But normally, don't we want the folder to be our new project name?
Yeah, well, you're going to CD out of the, we were in the server template file in our terminal. If you're in the same terminal, you want to CD out of that. Like mine, I keep all my stuff in a Lambda school folder. Wherever you normally clone your projects into, that's where you want to be. And then you just type in git clone with the URL, the clone URL that you copied from the MLK Fun project.
Right, but then
it generates a folder called MLK Fun.
Right, but what if but don't we want instead of it being renamed MLK Fun, wouldn't we want it to have the name of the new project, like MLK Fun Part 2?
No, because our first one should have been named Server Template.
Oh.
So we built the server template under the server template repository. And we got done with the template, and we're like, okay, well, let's go ahead and we pushed that to the master branch, got it on GitHub, saved on our local machine. So now we want to start a new project. So that's where we did the import the server template into the MLK Fun one, and then we cloned MLK Fun, put it in our directory that we wanted the project to live, and then basically cloned it in there and CD'd into it. So basically, we have a project called MLK Fun that has all of our files from our template in it because we imported those in.
Okay.
I lose anybody?
Oh, I'm here. I understand.
Any questions? Any confusion? Denise, you good?
I'm noodling over it because I'm being retentive about the names, and I did it slightly. So now I did the git clone. And instead of calling it MLK Fun, I called it Node Template. So now I've got my file folder called Node Template.
Okay. So you have a Node template as our fun project. What'd you name the first thing, the actual template?
I called that Node Practice.
Node Practice? Okay. Just remember that your Node Practice, I believe you could change the names in GitHub too.
Right.
The Node Practice is your template. Right now, we're just going to build like a fun project. We're going to build a database, and we're going to start making some endpoints and stuff. And we don't want that in our template boilerplate because that's going to change project to project.
Well, and that's what I was talking about, is that name is going to change every time. Okay, I've got you. Now I'm caught up.
Okay. Well, let's code this project we created. Good old welcome screen. You can see our git ignores there, all of our basic file structures there, everything we need, package JSON. And just like any other project that we first clone in, there's the very first command we got to type in.
npmi.
Yeah, npmi.
So Chris, for mine, I could essentially use either Node Template or Node Practice, correct? So I could just CD into Node Practice and use that as today's project.
Correct, you sure could.
CD, all right, I will do that.
All right, and now we are installed. So let me know when everybody gets there and installed and ready to go.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Now that I've changed, I'm in the node practice folder. What should I be doing? Just the code dot?
Yep.
Open it up. And then from there,
just type in npm I in a terminal in the terminal in there to make sure you got all the packages installed.
npm would be nice if I spelled that right. There you go. Okay.
All right, and after you got that, go into your package JSON file because we're going to change one thing in here that changes from project to project. That's the main.
Okay.
It still says server template 2 because we obviously just imported it and cloned it into this new one. Well, we want to give this the proper name. And this is MLK Fun. And we could even test it if you want to. You could run like a npm run server and make sure your server runs. It's always a good thing to try before you get started. It should run, but just to be certain. And we're running.
Mine crashed.
Well, what's it say?
It says watching extensions, starting node index.js.
Is your server still running on the original template? Because that can make it crash too, right?
Yeah, it's something already running on the port. Yeah, make sure you have all the other terminals shut down with that running.
Okay, let me.
But the arrow will say something already running on port 5000.
Yeah, no, and then let me go back to my index. My server. I'm just kind of curious now. Z and S. Interesting. So just for giggles, what I did is I commented out that const cores because it was running on the template. And so now I just uncommented it out and now my server's running.
Yeah, there you go. Cores. Gotta have that cores.
So thank you. I'm good now.
All right. And everybody's changed the name in their package JSON?
Yep.
All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to build us a database. So let's shut the server down. I think probably the easiest thing to do here would probably be
how did you shut the server down?
Control C or Command C on a Mac.
It's Control C on a Mac too.
It's
Command
C
C
on a Mac?
copies things. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's build us how about a users database? Takes in a name, a password, maybe a role. How's that sound? We can build endpoints to hit that?
Sure.
All right. So to build a database, now if you look in our knex file, we've already told this thing where we want stuff to go, but we haven't given it any names yet. So we're going to give this a name. We're going to call it users in our knex file. So this is when we run the knex commands, it's going to create a database called users db3. So once everybody has that and has that saved, let me know. All right, then we're going to go into our command line, and we're going to type in knex migrate : make users, just like that. And there's no space. This is somewhat confusing. It throws it off. Between migrate, make, and the colon, there are no spaces. It's got to be all one line. And then we'll push enter and see what happens. Ooh, it just made something. Oh, look, I just had a data folder up here. You see that? Cool, huh?
Oh, wow. That's neat.
Nice.
Yeah. And if I click in there, it's got a migrations directory. Cool. So I got a migration file now. Everybody at this point?
Yep.
All right, let's click in that migrations file. This is where we make our database. It has a function in it called up and down. And how this works is when you call the up function, or basically latest, that's what creates all of your database tables and does everything. And then let's say I had to make a change in this. I didn't like something in the migration, or I had to add a field or something like that. I'd have to call this down function, which when we get done typing it, what that's going to do is it's going to erase the database completely. And then I'd have to run the migration latest command again to get it to update with the new stuff I added. Now you can see where your backend guys get a little funky about, yeah, I don't want to add fields. You want to do it one time. So we're going to make us a database. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first command that we have in here, you can see it's already predetermined for you. It's taken in knex. We're going to, every function has to return something, right? We're going to return knex dot, we're going to write a database. Oh, I have lnex. That's awesome. We're going to return a schema. I forgot the H. Schema, and basically where this is telling it, it's a schema, it's a database schema, and we're going to create a table. We're creating a table. The table is, it's a function, and the first argument is the name of the table that we want to create. We're going to create a users table. And then the second argument is a callback function, and the callback function is what tells the create table schema what columns we want, what constraints we have on that, whether it has to be unique or whether it's nullable or not, whether it's a string or an integer. This is where, you know, basically we tell knex all that. So we're just going to give it a parameter called TBL. And it's going to be a fat arrow function. And the first thing we're going to put in is tbl.increments. And what this does is it automatically knex, when it sees this, it's going to give it a column called ID, and it's going to give it basically a serialized ID that can't be duplicated, that's unique to its own self, just with this one command. So this is where we designate the ID field for our table. Every table's got to have a unique ID for this to work. So when you get into like multi-table databases, each one of those tables has its own separate ID that identifies each row of that table. And that's what this command does.
Is it increments with a C?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I should probably put that in there. Huh? Yeah, there we go. All right, and then the next one, this is where we start identifying our columns. Our first one's going to be a string. And the name of this column is going to be, we'll call it username. Because all users need a username, right? Username. And we want this to be unique. That way no two people can have the same username. And it's going to be a thing called not nullable. What not nullable means is that when you're filling out these fields, like if somebody like on the front end is filling out a username and a password, and they send that package to the back end, the database is automatically going to check to see if that field's being inserted. If it's not, it's going to throw an error. It's saying it has to have it. So the next one, that's all we really need there. I don't see anything else. We're going to make another one that's also going to be a string. And we're going to label this as password. And a password doesn't have to be unique. Many people can have the same password. So we're not going to make that unique, but we are going to call it as a not nullable. You got to have a password to get in. and then we can add you can add as many values to this table as you want. Basically what we're doing is we're setting up columns in our database table right now. We have an ID column already, we have a username column, and we have a password column. We can add, I don't know, we can have one more called, we'll have it a string too. We can call it roll maybe. And we can have this just like this. We can make it to where you can have a role, you don't have to have a role. You know, it's up to you.
Do we need?
What's that?
Do we need a comma after each entry?
No.
We don't. Okay.
Nope. If you go by technical JavaScript, this should have a semicolon after each one.
Okay.
It's the end of a statement. But with new ES6 JavaScript, semicolons are optional, and I think they're ugly, so I don't use them.
Okay. And is it ing increments or in increments?
Oh, it's
It's in increments.
Catching my typos.
Hey, I've been staring at code all weekend long.
Denise, maybe you can help me after this. I've got an issue with
Sure.
today's project that I can't figure out.
4 hours. It took. I had to walk away, and then I came back, and then I found the missing bracket.
That was me last night. But hopefully it's just a missing bracket.
Yeah. And okay.
Everybody here?
Yes.
I'm still typing.
Still typing?
So what we're doing right now, is this Tuesday's material?
Probably. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Which is
Nice.
fabulous.
So we're ahead.
A little bit. We're creating a database. We're making our own. On a project like this, in order to query a database, we have to have a database, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to make a database so we can write some querying and do some goofing off with it.
No, it's nice to have the templates.
Yeah.
That's something that's been a goal of mine that I've not had.
All right, John, just give me a shout when you get done typing, and we'll write our down function. The down function is pretty easy.
Okay, I'm caught up.
All right. So down is just going to be a return, and it's same thing, knex schema, except the name of this method, rather than being create table, is going to be drop table if exists. And we're going to give it the name of that table that we created up there, users. And the reason why we have this is if we add anything here, like let's say the back or the front end comes to us and says, we have to have an age, can't live without it. We have to have an age of the user in here somewhere. So then you're going to have to put it in the table here. So you're going to, basically you're going to come in, you're going to make your modifications in here. You'll add that of age, but you're going to have to run a command that calls, it would be knex migrate : down. And what that does is it erases the database, and then you will do the latest command again, and it'll re-update it with a new table. So once we have this, go ahead and save this. And then we're going to try and create this database now.
Awesome.
All right, everybody got it saved and ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a command line command called knex migrate. And you're just going to type in : latest and push enter. And it's going to make a database. And I'll show batch 1, migrations 1, run 1. And if you click in your data file now, you're going to see users DB3.
Yes.
We just made a database. And you can check if it's there. If you have SQLite Studio, like I'll open that up real quick and show you. This is what I use to verify on stuff like that. So let's go ahead and disconnect from that database. Let's go to.
Is that what we just downloaded this morning?
No, you downloaded Database Designer. This is SQLite 3 Studio. This is where I practice my my commands, my SQL commands. Like you see, I did recipes, ingredients was my last one in here. It's actually the last project of this week. And I was typing in join commands. You type them in here to see if they work. So when you put them in your code, you can just type them and know it's going to work and fire it that way. But it also helps you check the database. So like I want to add a database. I'm going to go to my file structure. I'm going to go into Lambda School. We're working on MLK Fun, data. There's a user's database. Open. Okay, so now I have the user's database. I can click on that, and it tells me it's going to have migrations and migrations lock. Don't worry about those portions of it. The users table is what we created. So let's make sure we have everything. We have an ID. That was our first field. That's our primary key. A username, a password, and a role. All this stuff ended up in there. If we click on data, there's nothing there yet. But our database has been successfully created.
Can you drop a link to to that studio, please?
SQLite Studio? Yeah, sure. Find it.
During the recorded lecture, they advised us to use DB browser for SQLite.
DB browser?
Yeah, that's what he was using in the recorded lecture.
Really? Oh, you're talking about in Jason Mauer's recorded lecture?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different one because Luis uses this one.
Oh. Well, I've been using DB browser and it works okay, except if you're trying to do Postman on the same server, it'll crash everything. I learned that last night.
Oh, okay.
It's not a good sales pitch for that one.
Yeah, like yeah, this is it here.
Yeah, I have it installed. It's cool. It's great. It works great.
Yeah, this is what and the reason why I know Luis loses this is when I watched the Web 24 lecture, which is what I watched to do this. This is what he had us get. But that's probably all going to be subject to change as well, for the simple fact that he's going to try if 100% of everybody gets Postgres installed, which I think all of you do. We're not going to be using SQLite this week. We're going to be using Postgres.
Okay. It's just nice to have it, though.
Yeah.
Should I, if I have a Mac, use the download Mac OS X binary?
Yeah, you want to just download it for the Mac if it's a Mac. Oh, where am I at? I go. Yeah, you don't have to buy anything. Shouldn't have to. You should just click on download. Database is locked. What happened here? I might have given you the wrong link. Download, yeah, you would download Mac binary. I guess that's what you would do.
And I've got that. It gives me like those critical fixes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, critical fixes, initial release.
And then click on
You want to run the installer.
Installer, SQLite installer.
Install SQLite Studio.dmg. Be this file here.
Okay.
And you would run that, and I think in Mac you gotta do the fancy drag over file thing and stuff. And
yep, drag it into applications.
Yeah.
Which is so small.
Yeah, that's funny because we were in our staff meeting on Friday while you guys were taking your sprint challenge, and Luis got into it with one of our TLs that's like a big avid Linux user. About putting Postgres into stuff, and he's He goes, yeah, he goes, I don't understand you Linux users. You guys just might like pain or think your time's not worth a lot. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Linux is open source. He goes, yeah, it's open source, right? And he goes, how long did it take you to install that and get everything working? He's like, oh, to get Postgres to finally work, like 3 hours. He goes, so roughly what you're saying is your time isn't worth but like $30 an hour maybe just for that one? He goes, because you can buy Windows for $100. And he goes, all I got to do is put some corn on the enter key and put a chicken on my desk, and the chicken installs it for me. Because it just keep pecking the enter key, and it just goes in town, and it's installed. Postgres done. Yeah, he was going back and forth with him about that. And I was like, no, this is getting fun. Yeah.
Win is great if you really like a Unix-based operating system, but don't want all like hand-holding that the iOS gives you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want all the customization ability of a Windows computer with the Unix operating system of a Mac.
Yeah.
But you're basically shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I run Windows. I mean, for one, it's got cool video games every once in a while, and seems to run everything without an issue. Every once in a while, you get a blue screen error or something like that, but it's just like any other computer, I would say. So we have a database now. Everybody here with the database, everybody at this point, because we're going to make one more thing.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We're going to type in another command line command called knex seed make. And push enter. Oh, I forgot to name it. Knex seed :make, and we're going to call it, we'll call it users. Let me know when that happens.
Okay, so got the users DB3 pop up.
Yeah, the knex seed make will actually create this seeds directory with a seed file.
Okay. Yes.
So now we have a seed.
Mm-hmm.
And in here you can see they give you a little bit of boilerplate.
Mm-hmm.
Where they have deletes all existing entries, so on and so forth. You don't want to run this delete command. You're going to run a command called truncate. Because with the delete command, is everything has a unique ID when we run this stuff, right? Well, if you ran this several times, like you unseated and seeded the database, it would never redo the IDs. It would act wonky, from what I understand. So if you use truncate, it always moves it up to the soonest number after something's removed and replaced. So if you just had delete, let's say, even it'd still be stored in the memory, but let's say we deleted the seeds and we reran the seeds, and we originally started with ID 1, 2, 3. When we reseeded it again, our ID numbers would be 4, 5, 6, even though it only had 3 entries in there. So if you do it with truncate, every time you unseed and reseed the database, it always starts with those ID numbers that you give it initially, 1, 2, 3, even though they're technically supposed to be automatically done by the database. It allows you to overwrite that.
Okay.
So we'll start with 3 users. Why not? First thing we got to do is give it the table name that we're going to. Our table name is users. Now the rest of this has to match what we put in our database migrations. So we know that our first one, we know our first one was called username. Oh. So we're going to make one called username.
Okay.
And here we'll have one, we'll call this one Denise. I'll call this one John. I'll call this one Gabriel. Oh, if I can spell Gabriel, there we go. Now we know we need some extra fields too. So we're gonna add some extra fields. We know we have a password field that we need. And we know we have a role field that we need. So basically what we're setting up is we're populating each row with this object. So we have an ID, and we're telling it the ID, even though, you know, the database automatically does that for us. When we add something to it through SQL commands with the seeds, we have to give it to it. So let's see, I want to make password, I want to make everybody's password just password. Let's see, role. Let's see.
Oh,
Call role student and student. A lot of this is redundant, but I just wanted extra fields in here. So let me know when everybody's at this point.
This password. I'm gonna make my PW because I'm lazy.
The puppy has been passed out for an hour.
Oh, wow.
I ran him ragged before we got started, just in hopes that he'd just like crash for the whole thing.
Well played. Okay, users, insert.
Speaking of puppies.
Oh, there's John's comb puppy.
Puppy got fixed.
He's been fixed. He got his dew claws taken off.
Mm.
Oh, he got rid of the daggers.
He got rid of his little doodly bops on his hind legs. He had like non-attached, no bone dew claws that just like hung off and wiggled and would get caught on things. We got him taken off so that he wouldn't rip them off by accident.
Oh yeah.
Nice. All right. So is everybody here?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go back into our command line now. And we're going to type in another knex command. This is going to be knex seed. Don't mistake this for the plural seeds, but it's seed run. And push enter. Uh-oh, I got an error. What happened?
I got an error too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Delete table. Delete from table name.
No such table name. Oh, I forgot to change the table name up here.
That's users, right?
Yeah, users.
So if we were to create multiple tables, we would just do this, what we're doing right now.
Yeah, you'd have multiple seeds, multiple migrations, so on and so forth. Yeah. All right. Now that we did that, let's try that again. Errors are good. They tell you what's wrong. I like errors. Next seed. Run. Work. Oh, I got a green line. I mean to work.
Next space, seed, colon, run.
Yep.
Okay, and it said ran 1 seed files.
Yep. Everybody get a seed file run?
Nope, not me. I got an error.
What'd you get?
Error while executing seed entered into users ID, password role.
Make sure all your names match.
Username, password. Oh, forgot an extra ness on password.
There you go.
Let's see if that works. So it's seed colon run.
Yep. Connect seed :run. No S.
Knex seed : run. Using environment development ran one seed files. Okay, no errors.
There we go. And how you can check this worked is if you have SQLite Studio or whatever you guys are using to maybe connect to the database, we can go into here. We got columns, indexes. Click on data, and let's try to refresh it.
How do we connect to the database?
You have SQLite Studio running?
Mm-hmm.
All right. When you have SQLite Studio running, you'll see a thing up here that says add a database.
Mm-hmm.
You'll click on that. That'll take you to a file explorer.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically want to navigate to wherever that database file lives on your local machine. Like an MLK fun, data, there it is.
Node practice. And then go into data.
Yeah, it's inside data.
And then go to the users DB3.
Yep, click on users and just click open.
And then say okay.
And then you would probably have to disconnect and reconnect if you already had it up.
Okay.
And click on data. Look at that.
Nice.
Y'all are there. You're in the database by seed data.
Let me see. You're clicking on users. I see my users. I just don't see my. Oh, because I'm.
Click on the data tab here. Like when you double click on it, and over here there's a little data tab.
My tabs aren't. I have the column, but I don't have those tabs popping up for some reason.
Okay, let me think of how I get those. Here, let me just start over. Let me remove this. Remove the database. Yep. All right. That's just query and history. So this is where my query editor is. None of that's there. So let's go add a new database file. Users open. Okay. Double click that. It opens users. When I double clicked on users, it gave me that.
That's strange. There's something.
And I clicked on data. I don't know, they don't give you a really good rundown of how to really go through this program too well. One of these tabs up here will give you the view once it's connected. I'm trying to remember which DLL history. That's the editor. Create a view. What happens when you click create a view? View name, nothing. Yeah, all I'm doing is double clicking users right here and it's bringing it to me.
Oh, okay. I think data. I've got it. I'm being a dorky Mac user. I was doing a single click instead of a double click.
All right.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Let's take a quick 5-minute break. I need to take a quick break, get something to drink, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to start writing query commands, and we're going to start talking to this thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So I'll see y'all in about Looks like I'm the first one back. Oh, there's John.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the puppy went outside. He woke up when I got up. Imagine that. Say
Yeah.
hi, puppy. Say hi. Woof, 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 woof. Look at that. Is that doggy?
God, where are you going?
Is that a
Where are
doggy?
you going, guys?
Is that a doggy?
He's got a radar dish on his head.
He's like, I don't know what that is.
What? What, Gus?
There we go. All right, go play, buddy. I couldn't tell whether he had the number 2 or not, so I might get a little surprise here while we're working. If you see me start, because he's got that puppy poo that just stinks something terrible.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like a little Tootsie Roll that comes out of him. That's all it is. But man, the stench is like, ooh, it like fills up the house.
Yeah, we call it puppy butt.
All right, so we'll wait for Denise to get back. When everybody's back, we're gonna start writing some. We're gonna start writing some model files. The model. So yeah, we don't need this. We know we're talking to it.
All right. I miss the puppy.
Oh, you want to see a puppy?
Mm-hmm.
Here, puppy. Here's the puppy.
Oh, it's so cute.
Hey, puppy. Hey, puppy. Yeah, he's over a pound now. He's getting big.
Wow.
Over a pound. All right. So at this point, we have index server. We got a running server. We have our database set up with seeds and all the tables and stuff that we think we're going to need. So now the first thing I want to do is I want to rename this file from our boilerplate. We're going to call this one users, not router. And you would create multiple versions of this. Like if you had users and then you had, like, let's say it was a store, you had products, you would have a products folder. If you had, I don't know, cars that went with the products, you'd have a cars folder, things like that. You'd have one of these folders for each database table that you're working with. Is basically what it boils down to.
So you made a users folder in the data folder?
No. That's the seeds. This one was originally called router from our boilerplate.
Oh, okay.
I renamed it to users. Matter of fact, we're going to rename the rest of this stuff now that's relevant to the content that we're using it for. Like router molder, we're going to rename that to, we're going to rename this file to users model. And we'll rename router to you. Basically, so it matches the data you're working with, so it's not confusing when you got to go read back through this stuff.
Okay.
We know we have a users folder with a users model and a users router. That's obviously going to the users database or users database table, because this database file could end up with multiple tables in it. You'd have a users, the products, like I was just saying before, all that. That'd still be just one file called users db3, but it'd have all those different tables built into that file. So now that we have this, we need to, first thing I like to do is let's import that into our server.js. Let's get that out of the way. So we're using Express.json, we're using cores. Under that, well, first let's create the variable for it. We're going to call this const user router. And we're going to set that equal to a require. And we're going to require, from our users folder, we're going to require the users router. And then we're going to tell the server to use it. And we're going to give it an endpoint of API users. And we're going to tell it to use the user router. So now everything that's directed to like API users and so on past that is going to go through the user router.
We don't need to have, it's just /API, not a dot, not dot.
Correct. Dot is only for file names. It's a common mistake made here. This part of the use is for a URI. So this is actually the URL that goes into the URL of your browser. That's where this comes from. So there's no dots in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you only use the dots for file name locations.
Okay, that's good to know.
So now that we have that saved, we're importing that. Now, before we can use any of this, we have to create our models or our functions that talk directly to the database. This is where we write our SQL language, or structured query language. We're just going to write very basic stuff for that today because it hasn't been covered yet in class in depth. And there ain't no need to melt y'all's minds thus far today with that. So we're going to go into our user model. This is where we're going to start. This is where we have our knex, config, and all that stuff. And we've created this variable called database. And that variable called database, this is where it's going to start adding up here. We're going to go under our exports. I'm with Luis on this. When he explains this, he'll tell you he always likes the module exports for these files to be at the top because you can see everything you're exporting. You can see, like, if you click into it, you know all the functions that are coming out of it. As opposed to having to scroll to the bottom after you write all the functions, because you're going to have a lot. All right, we're going to start with just a very first basic. Our first function is going to be a find function. And we're just going to build a function that basically finds all the users in the database. So we're going to call function find. That's what we'll call it. And you can name these whatever you want, by the way. They don't have to be labeled find. There's no real, strongly type thing, whatever about them. So we're writing a find function. And our find function, this is going to be this is the easiest function you'll ever write. We're going to return, oh, by the way, all these always return. We're going to return, we want to go to our database. Okay, our database, and then the name of that database, which is users. And then we're going to go ahead and in our export modules up here, we just type in find. And now it's exported. What this function will do is when it's invoked by our endpoint calls, like in our router, it's going to find everything that's in the database users and return it to us. Basically all it does. Now let's do an insert. Insert's probably it's another somewhat easy one to do on this end anyway. So we're going to write a function. We're going to call this one insert. And it's going to take in a user, a new user. Like if we're adding a user from our endpoint, we're going to bring that in here. So basically this is like, almost think of it as your user router is like middleware to this function, and this function tells the database what to do. So we would be calling this insert in our user router after we ran our checks and our own middlewares, and we would be inserting that user object that we got from probably the front end into this function to be inserted into the database. That's how that's kind of how the chain of commands following. So every one of these functions, by the way, returns something. You don't run middleware in any of these functions. This is just direct connection to the database. So we're going to return the database. And we always have to tell it what database because there could be multiple tables inside of that database file. And we're going to users. And then we're going to call, this is our first SQL command. And it's also called insert. And we're going to insert that new user. So this is an actual structured query language command called insert.
And the ID is generated, right?
Automatically, yep.
Automatically, yeah.
And that's the way we set it up. So we're going to export insert. And you just, as you create these, you add them up here. So you know what they are. So now we have a way to find everybody. We have a way to insert a new user. Let's, what other one can we put in here?
An update. I mean, like, because that's where I was tripped up on my project.
Well, yeah, deleting a user and then updating a user.
Okay, we want to update a user. All right. Truthfully, I got to remember how to do that myself. Give me just a second here. I think it's also an insert command, but I want to be certain.
I think it's update, isn't it?
Update for SQL update?
Yeah, for SQL. I don't know about this though.
Yeah, let me look and I'm going to pull up the project I didn't check. We'll open this one.
And in the meantime, I'm going to take.
Let's see what we got in here. All right, let's take a look at our model. No, I didn't here. Yeah, that was pretty basic then on that one. Web database 2 is not much going on that. I did not complete that. Okay, yeah, so let me go into database 3 then. That one just wanted to create and read. Let me find it. This is why we have our old projects, right? I literally did this like a month ago and I forgot that part already. Oh, DB3. Let's open that one. Schemes model. Okay, there's an update function. And it is update, you're right. So we'll write that in the SQL command. Basically, anything you do after you call this database like this, anything that's chained at the end of this is an actual SQL command that is written in JavaScript, and knex and Express interpret that to communicate with the database. So let's, should we call it update?
I did.
Okay, we'll write a function called update. Function update. And the function update is going to take in, it's going to have two parameters. It's going to have the changes, and it's also going to be taking in the ID because we got to tell it what to change and where.
Okay.
So in order to write an update, we got to be giving it some changes, but we also have to be able to tell it where we're changing it. So that's where the ID comes in.
Gotcha.
So we're going to return. We got the database, users. All right, and then next command, which when these commands start getting a little thick, I like to just chain them down rather than to the side. We're going to type in our first SQL command called where. And we're going to say where, this is basically going to be ID. That's the ID part of the object equals the ID that we pass in. So wherever this ID matches the ID in the database. So if you follow the chain, when we call this update, we're telling it, okay, it's grabbing the database users, and it's grabbing the part where the ID matches the ID that we sent in.
And is that a destructure?
Something like that. It's you could it is destructured because I could say where users.id is equal to the ID coming in, but this is just the shorthand way of saying grab that ID from user's ID. So it is destructured and see if it matches the ID that I'm sending it.
Gotcha.
And then after that, it's going to be .update. And so it finds where the ID is, and it's going to update our changes that we send in. And that should be the end of that one.
Nice.
Okay, so let's make sure we export update. Got to send that out. And let's see, we'll give ourselves an ability to
Delete user.
Yeah, we'll make a delete one. Function, we'll call it remove. So it doesn't get confused with the actual delete commands and stuff. We're going to remove. Now remove, this is a pretty basic one. We're going to need an ID to know what to remove. We're going to return the database with the table of users. And it's also real similar to the last one we wrote. It's going to have a where. Also destructure where the ID is equal to the ID. And then our last command is literally .del. And that's the SQL command for delete.
Okay, so function
remove.
Where, so we don't have to pass the actual ID in delete function because we're already grabbing it in the where?
No, we're passing it right here in remove.
Okay.
But basically what we're doing is when we call this, we're saying get the database users, the table. Get it where the ID matches this ID. So it's going to grab that one line. And then the next command is just delete that line.
Okay.
Delete that row. That's what it does. So we're basically telling it to delete where this ID matches in the where. So yes, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Can we do a find user by ID next?
Yeah. We can do it by find by username too.
Okay.
That's actually one of my favorites. Let me find. Yeah, this is because I think that's more relevant because a lot of times when you're trying to find a user, you don't know their ID per se too much. The username, especially if it's unique, that's normally a more effective way to do it. But it's all written the same. You're just basically looking for something that matches a set portion of that table. So what we're going to do is we'll write a function. We'll find it by username. Function, we'll call it find by username. And we're going to pass this a username. And we're going to return database users. And we're going to say dot. Now this is where it gets really cool on shorthand. Where, and if you do it this way and just type in username, it'll look where username matches username. So if you think ahead enough to where you match this parameter name with the actual name that's in the table, you can write it this way. And then the one last command that they tell you to tie on, even though we have it set to unique, but I think Blevins explained it and makes it run the query faster because it doesn't run over the whole table each time you do it. But you type in the command first. And what this does is it's going to search for that username and it's going to start running through the table. Whenever it finds that first match, it's going to stop and return that. And because we have it unique, if we had a table of thousands of users, we don't really need it searching through them all each time that we call this. We need to get to what we want and stop. And
so
first does that.
What did you say that if we plan ahead and match?
Well, let's say if I'm finding by username, this username here,
Mm-hmm.
the name in my table is also username. So when I do my where destructured and I just type in username, it's basically like saying username like we did up here, but you can shorthand it even further by just typing in username. It automatically knows because it's named the same way. It's named the parameter name. It's named the name on the table. So it just uses that name across the spectrum and saves you some typing.
Can you do the same thing for the ID or no?
I think so. I haven't tried it on the ID yet, but we can. We'll play with that when we write our endpoints. We'll start moving stuff around and see what works.
Okay.
Best way to find out, trial and error, right?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and let's export all of our functions. Make sure they're all being exported.
Mm-hmm.
And that's simply just like that. We literally wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model functions to talk to this database. We got all the CRUD operations covered already. Plus an extra one defined by username. That quick, that easy, bam, done.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with a single database, it's real easy. It's the multi-tables that'll get you, which you'll learn.
Yeah, that's what was hard with us is when you have like 2 distinct users. Like we had the farmer and then we had the buyer. And it was just, for lack of a better word, it was a shit show.
Yeah. And that's all on the database design. And you're going to learn about that too. You want to design a database, they tell it to be normalized, is what they're going to teach you, a normalized database. And what a normalized database means that no column is repeated.
Okay.
So let's say you have farmers, and there's obviously a column called farmers. Let's say the farmers had fields. So you'd have another column, basically a field, or another database with fields with different entities in it. You would never type another farmers column into that fields database because you don't want to repeat yourself. That at that point makes it not normalized. So in order to normalize a database, that's where you have what they call many-to-many relationships, where you actually build an intermediate table to talk to the two of them. And you use foreign keys. You'll use the ID from farmers and you use the ID from the fields to help, basically sort them out and be able to query each one without ever repeating a column.
Gotcha.
And the way they explained it to me when I watched the videos was the reason you want a normalized database is it keeps memory leaks, data leaks, things getting overwritten accidentally. It keeps all that from happening in a database. If you no matter how many tables you have, truthfully, the only column that's ever going to be repeated is ID, which is going to be just for that table. That's probably where you ran into issues with that. Somebody had a bad database design.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think it through real hard, and at that point, it becomes really hard to navigate.
Oh, yeah.
So we have all of these. We are exporting all of these. We are pretty much done here. Let's go check out our router. We're in the router. Okay, so we got our express router. Now the next thing we need to get is our model. We need to get all of those functions we just wrote into this router. So we'll call that let's see here. I'm gonna call it DB just so we don't have name confusion. When you start exporting, you don't have to worry about it too much because normally each model is going to have its own router and it's going to be tied to its own table. So you can call it DB in every router that you write, if you know what I mean. And it'll help keep your naming kind of in check when you're writing these methods, as opposed to calling it like users. Because users is taking in a user and returning the user to the users to the user. You're like, okay, well, where's users coming from? So we'll just name it that, and we're going to require it. And it's going to be a file path. We're requiring the model. And we're also exporting this router now. So now we can write our first function. First function should probably be, let's call it router.get. And this router is coming from this router variable that we got here. We're going to get, and we're just going to get to the /. Now this / obviously gets added to the end of what we imported into our server. So it would be API users / would be the command. That confused some people last week, so I just want to kind of get that in. You understand how that URL is chaining together with our imports. So in here, we don't have any middleware in here yet, but we need the next most important thing. The homies.
Rec and res.
Rec and res, we got our homies. Now we have this database, so we're going to db dot, and this is where we have all of those functions that we just exported out of our model. We know our first one was called find. So we're going to call find. And if you're ever wondering, like when you're writing these functions together, Blevins had a great idea watching his video, is he actually split the screen and had the model down here.
Yeah.
As he was writing it up there. So he's looking at it, he's got this find command and he's writing the find. And then when he wrote the next one, he had it down here so he could see what was going on as he wrote all these functions. Now, it does get a little cluttered when you do it this way. It's hard to understand, you know what I mean?
Hard to follow during the video.
Yeah, but that's what he did. He was checking each one. Lucky for us, VS Code normally will tell us right away.
Yeah.
Like when I started typing in this find, if you notice, I was like db dot, look at all those right there. IntelliSense of VS Code just told me every method I have for that database. So if you got your extensions going properly, this goes easier. So we got db.find. And then after we find it, we're going to have then what are we going to have? We're going to have a user come back. And this is also a callback. So if our user comes back successful, we want to send a response. And I still haven't looked up all these status codes. I believe this one's just going to be a 200.
Same.
We're going to send JSON. And the reason we're able to do this is because we told our server to use JSON. So we don't get any errors. We'll send it a message. Or actually, no, we'll just send it back to user. User should be an object. And then we're going to do a .catch for our error. And this is going to return an error message. And this is also a tip I picked up from Blevins, which makes a lot of sense. When you're writing your error messages, your catches, always console.log the error.
Yeah.
Console log the error, then write your response. Really, puppy? Come on, man.
I would stay away from the squeak toys.
Yeah. Response.status. This is going to be a 500. .json. And in here we'll put a message. And the message will say, did not find users. And there's our first command.
Is it users or, oh, that, because we're doing all of users. Okay.
Yeah, I'm finding all the users. All right, so
Nice.
you know when everybody's here. Everybody's here. Let's see if we can run the server without an error.
So npm1 server.
Is it going to go? Woohoo, it's going.
Sweet.
All right, we're running on 5,000. Why don't we try our first endpoint? Let's open up good old Postman here.
Postman.
Okay.
Postman. Let's get rid of all these. I don't need them now.
This is called mode practice.
This is API/users or user?
Whatever you wrote it in as.
Okay, so it's users.
This is a GET request.
Oh, something wrong in server.
Local host
5,000.
5,000.
/APIs/users. Mine worked.
Send. Yes. Success.
Oh. Okay. So my JSON, I put in users instead of user.
Save.
There you go. I got it.
Let me know when everybody hits it on the get, because you're going to see a really bad problem here.
Okay. I'm there.
Do you see a problem with this?
The password showing?
Yeah, your password's showing.
Oh.
This isn't a problem when you're doing a normal query of a GET request, but think about it. If we're actually building this for users, we don't want everybody to see the password. You know what I mean? So why don't we just fix that real quick? I'm going to show you how. You see where we're setting this responsive user?
Uh-huh.
Before we do that, we're going to take and we're going to destructure this. We know what we're getting back. Okay. And we're going to destructure this out like this. And we're going to type in username, ID, and role. And we're going to set that equal to user. And then down here in our JSON, we're just going to return an object of username, ID, and role. So we're eliminating password out of that response. So if we save this, I know when you get here, and we'll go back to Postman and make sure it worked.
Okay, so we constituted
okay. I destructured it before the promise, not within it.
Yes. What part of this is the promise?
What part is the promise?
Mm-hmm.
Dot then.
Yeah.
Okay. So a dot then is a promise.
Yep. I really, the promise thing confused me right off the start, and they didn't cover it too much. I always just read it as, I don't know, it might be just me, but I ever watched the movie Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes.
And you ever remember when they're at the Chinese food place and the lady's going, and then? That's what this is. You can chain then together repeatedly, and then, and you can tell it what to do as you go through. And then catches no and then.
Now I went to Postman, and now I'm getting an empty object.
Same.
Oh, well, maybe we did it wrong. Let me see if I get it on my end. Yeah, we're getting an empty object. All right, let's see what we did wrong here.
Okay.
How did I mess this up? Oh, I know why. This returns an array. I forgot about that. Put that in there.
And why are we starting with 0?
Huh? Because it returns an array of objects, I believe. Let me just try this and see if it works. Sometimes you gotta just poke around these things.
I received.
Wondering if it should be an empty array.
Well, it returns an array with only one object in it, and that object has an array of all the users in it. So I can show you how that works here. Let me do another send, And I just got the first one back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
I did the same thing, but I received just the name.
let me think
I've
how
got,
I can just structure this.
Gabriel, I got the username, ID, and role.
Let's see, what did I do wrong? Username, ID, role.
I like that. Really wants that first one in there.
Ah, okay, because I didn't put in an object well, in the JSON
Mm-hmm.
on line 8.
I bet we can use. I bet we can map this over. Let's try doing something like that.
Okay.
Let's
Users.
call const. I'm just gonna let me comment this out. This is basically just raw JavaScript. We're just trying to figure this out. It's probably because I'm returning multiple users. So let's go const. We'll call it user. Users equals user dot map, and for each item we're going to return return an object with username, ID, and role. Let me see if that works. And then in here, I will just put users. Let me hit that and see what I get. Oh. Couldn't find them. Okay. Why couldn't I find them? Oh, I know why.
Okay, on the return.
Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing wrong here?
I texted Malika.
Oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay. Username. It's going to be item dot username. And then we're going to have ID. We're going to have role. I'll eventually get this to work. Hey, I got it. You see what I did?
Role.
Oh, okay. So you mapped it, you returned an object.
I'm returning an object for each user in that array, but I'm only returning the username, the ID, and the role.
Something wiggy somewhere.
Jordan's gonna laugh so hard because for years we've been talking about like, man, you know, if we ever get my mom to come, like we're gonna have to go all out, like, you know, and now it's happening. I'm like, oh my God, we're going all out.
All right, you guys catch up. I'm gonna find the dog. He's making noise and scaring me.
It's too quiet.
Chewing on a leaf.
Users somewhere.
Come on. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Doing puffs. What you doing?
40%.
What you doing?
It's 40%.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I'm happy to see you too. Yep.
That's fine.
Hi.
Including taxes.
No biting. No biting. Well, puppy teeth are dangerous.
Oof. Wait till they start falling out.
Yeah.
I've got a collection of all this guy's teeth.
Are you gonna crawl up on my shoulder? Is that your deal. All right, here, get down. Go find something to squeak on. Make noise so I know you're around. All right, so everybody here?
Yes.
Everybody get it working?
Yep.
Everybody understand why that works?
Kind of, sort of.
Mostly.
It's raw JavaScript. Basically, we're calling a map function, an array method, because we know we're getting back this array. This user object that comes back from the database is an array. So we're mapping over that array. For each item in that array, we're returning that item's username, ID, and role. Basically everything but the password. So what this is going to do is it's going to return a new array that we're calling users, because map returns a new array. And what it's doing is it's adding one of these objects to that array each time it runs through.
Why would it be a dot map instead of a dot filter? Because we're getting everybody?
Yeah, because we're grabbing everybody.
Okay, so if we wanted to do this for an individual, we would do a dot filter.
Yeah, you can do a dot filter. Yep.
Gotcha.
So there's our first GET request. All right, we wrote our first function. Cool. All right, let's write another one. Let's do router dot. Do we have a we could do the host. Let's add a user. I go to the same endpoint. Let me scroll this up so you can see. We're gonna give it to homies.
For Diane, and then I mark down all of the normal allergies for Jordan. And then when you get there,
all right, so we have the homies.
If you had some allergies, let's go over that again. And they were super, super accommodating. Like the chef has walked out.
I'm not going to worry about any middleware or anything at this point, just because it's kind of like just to go through the flow. So we're not gonna check to see if like the request body has the proper stuff in it or anything like that. So we're just gonna call insert. And we're gonna insert the request.body.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
we'll get back a user object. And we're gonna response.status. I think it's 203 or 201.
There's gonna be plenty of room for us to stretch.
I think it's 201 when you add somebody. JSON will send back the user object. Forget. We'll do a dot catch.
One of us will take a nap. Like
go in there. Error.
Right. So for the sitting area, like
console.log the error.
Like.
Or response.status 500.
So it depends, if Jordan gets one
message.
We're looking at it. If she gets it off, then we'll stay the whole way on Tuesday. So the plan is 3 days before. That's going to be what we do.
Sounds like John's wife's working on a Monday too.
Unable to add user.
All right, let me know when everybody's here.
I'm there.
There, everybody's server still running on the save?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let's go postman it. Let's add a response, but we're gonna make this a post. Grab this URL, because we're gonna, you notice we're using the same URL?
Yep.
Okay, good. Postman, we're doing a post.
Or you can like right click on the tab and just duplicate, and it'll also paste the URL.
Oh, cool. All right. Now, in order to do this, we gotta send a body. We'll call it JSON.
Localhost. users. Go to the body. JSON.
What should my role be?
So what are we doing when we're actually typing this in JSON?
We are creating the body of the object body that we're going to send to the API.
And what is, like when we're doing dot body, what is that?
The way that a request is sent, like from Axios, I'll explain it from Axios, is that like, if you remember, like when you call axios.post and you gave it the URL to go to, and then you added the second object at the end of that, whatever your form data was or whatever that may be, that's the body that you're sending in that request. So we're just we're duplicating it here. This would be basically be the data that your form's putting out in your React app.
This is just an easier way of doing it instead of just having to create a React app and then make a form and then actually make that call.
Yeah, we literally just type it in manually.
Yeah.
So my role is going to be, I'll make my role student as well, or I can make my role just, I'm teaching at the moment. I'm going to be a teacher. Yes. So let's send this and see if it works. Sending. Oh, I got a response with the ID of 4.
Okay, so
that means if I do a GET request, hey, there I am. Woohoo!
I did not work. I got an error.
What'd you get?
Async drain queues.
Async drain queues?
Not defined.
It says error SQLite not an error. Error number 21. SQLite misuse.
Did you select this as JSON?
I did.
You have it as raw and JSON and Postman.
Yep, I have it as raw, JSON, and I have the localhost 5000 API. I have username, colon, I did a Denise instead of a Chris.
Oh, that's why.
Why?
The Denise name is unique and it's already in the seeds. Username unique.
Yes. All right, let me fix this then.
Users.
How do I stop? Oh, cancel. Oh.
Yeah.
No, I didn't like that one either.
So you're still getting an error with a different username?
Maybe I need to stop and start.
Yeah, and do a GET request too to make sure it didn't go through and then error out. Like send your GET request here just to see.
Okay, save this one. Save. Let me go back to my GET. Where's my GET? Send. I think that worked. Post. Send. Now it still doesn't like my post.
All right, let me stop sharing. Let's take a look and see what's going on. Everybody else working, or they got errors too?
I have a minor error. I have mine states users is not defined, but I don't see nowhere where I'm calling users in my post request.
Post request.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I have after the promise, I have user, not users, and within my JSON, I have user.
Okay, so you have users here and user here?
No, I have both of them are user. On line 23 on my post, it's the same thing as yours. Then user. and JSON users is not the. Am I doing something wrong in Postman? I don't think so.
Do that. Let's check the model on the insert. You have your table labeled users on the model?
Yeah, users. Wait. User model. What file? The model?
Yeah, the modal.
On my insert,
Mm-hmm.
I have a user.
Well, that's why there's no user table. It's users. Or are you talking about the insert here?
Oh, on line 19? Yeah, I have database users.
You have users? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
users.
right. And then you're inserting a user.
That's my issue. Yep. I put in users, not user.
Yep, there we go. All right, now let's take a look at Denise's error, see what's going on.
And I get back an ID of 4, or just a 4, an object of 4.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right.
1. Okay, so here's my post. I think that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, looks like it.
And
Oh, I see what your issue is. You got the homies backwards.
Oh yeah, res.
Naming doesn't matter, but the order does.
this. Like
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
And then let me do a.
There
thank
you
you.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. That was so simple.
Don't ever mix up the homies.
I've never done that, but now I know.
Okay, so we're adding a user. We have that working. So let's make another one. We just made a post. Which one should we make next? We got 3 more to build.
We need a put and delete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll make a. Why did I start out with dot router? Router dot put. Let's make the put request. Okay, now this one we're gonna have a little different of a URL. We're gonna have /API/users. I'm sorry, no, we don't have that at all. It's /:ID. I forgot API users is part of our router. So now we're gonna find it by the ID. And then we're gonna put our homies in. Rec and res. And since we're not using any middleware, we can make this pretty quick. db dot update. db.update, and we're gonna send in. Let's see, I gotta remember the order here. So we're gonna go into. That's why we always keep that model up there. What's my order? Order's everything. Names doesn't matter. So we're gonna send in our changes first, and then our ID.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's usually the other way around, right?
Yeah, let's fix that here.
Okay, go back to our modal. Put ID changes.
Yeah, we're just gonna change the order so it's a little less confusing. That's one thing I noticed about JavaScript with parameters. You can name parameters anything you want. You could change those names of parameters as you chain the functions through, but the order matters. It goes by order, not by name. So we have that. So we're going to send in our update. We're going to do the request.params. .id. That's our ID. And then the request.body is our change.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there's no middleware in here. A lot of times you'd be writing a lot of middleware and setting variables and stuff. But just for something basic like this, we don't really need to do that for what we're doing at the moment. And then I'm gonna get back a user. We type user a lot when doing this. We'll call this one 203. It's one of the 200s.
We don't want to do a console log.
Do it on the catch. That's where I do it. Catching the error. Console.log the error. And response.status 500.
Let's see.
JSON message. Unable to edit user. All right, let me know when everybody's at this point, and then we'll start hitting Postman and trying it. See if we're messed up anywhere.
Able to edit user. Yeah, something doesn't. Somewhere along the lines, I've got an error. Oh, here we go.
Error right in the function here.
Yeah, I caught my typo. I caught one of them. Oh, no, I'm good. I caught it.
All right. Let's go to Postman. Let's try and hit that. We'll just go with an ID of, actually, let's try this. We're going to duplicate the tab. There we go. We're going to make it a put. And we're going to go after, whatever ID 1 is. We're going to go in the body. And we're going to try and just change one thing. So let's back all this stuff out. And I don't know what ID 1's name was, but we're gonna call it puppy. And we're gonna hit that and see if it works.
How did you get duplicate?
Right click on the tab and duplicate tab.
Denise, you can also click the 3 buttons next to the plus. And that'll duplicate whatever you can scroll down to duplicate current tab.
Nice.
So whatever tab you have highlighted will duplicate.
Okay, that worked for me because the right click wasn't giving me the duplicate.
I'm gonna hit it and see what happens.
Users.
Oh, I got it. That's a success. Let's do a GET request. Oh, user ID 1 was Denise. Let's see if that's puppy now. It's puppy. Haha, it works.
I got. Do I have? Is this a GET request?
No, it's a put request.
It's a put request. Okay.
Yeah. Let's send that and let's change it back. Looks like it changed it back.
I got the error message.
You got the error message?
Mm-hmm.
What name did you put in?
Oh, I didn't put in a name. So to put in a new name, go to body, JSON.
And just change the username.
If you try to change the username to an existing username already in the database, then it won't work, right?
Yeah, correct. It'll throw an error. It still has to be unique the way we set it up.
Yeah, that's what I did. Throw me an error, then I changed it to something different, and then it worked.
Yeah. And that's where your middleware comes in to eliminate that error. You'd have middleware that would change the response to something else that you would send back to the front end saying, like, username already exists. And how you would set that middleware up is that you'd actually run the find command, or like find by username. That's where find by username comes in handy. Whenever you have a unique variable and you're going to allow somebody to search or change that, that's unique, you always want to have a find by command for it. So you can find it through your middleware, do a find and see if it's there. And if it's there, throw back a response saying name already exists. If it's not there, then allow it to pass and do a change.
Now, how do you
What's
know,
that?
How do you know that worked? Because I typed the username and I put puppy.
Did you get back a 1?
I did.
And go back to your get request tab and push send.
And then go back to my get, press send.
You should see the name for ID 1 change.
Yes, and it changed to puppy.
Yeah.
Got it. Nice.
It's all working. We're not long now.
And we did that. Let me save that.
All right, so everybody's caught up there. We got one more command really to do to complete all CRUD operations. That's the delete command. That's the easiest one, I think.
EID.
Yeah. So we're going to type in router, and we're in the user router file. Dot delete. I believe it's delete. Yeah. Router dot delete, and is it called delete? I gotta remember now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so. I couldn't remember if it was just del or delete. And we're gonna have this to a URL with the same thing, just an ID. We're gonna have our homies. Rec and res. All right, and in here we're gonna call our database db dot, I believe it's remove. Remove takes only one, and it's gonna be the request dot params dot ID. We have a dot then, and you can just keep calling it user because we're in the user table, but you can name that stuff anything. And you can have your response.status, call it a 203. One of these days I'll look that up. And your JSON, this is just by the way, this .then, this means it's successful. You don't have to return what the database gives back to you. You can literally set a return message here to tell the front end, user successfully deleted. You can send stuff like that rather than just sending back the object that normally comes back out of here is normally a number. On the delete request, it's the number of records that are deleted. So if you call it delete and you remove like 3 or 4 records on that delete command, if it's set up that way, it'll tell you how many records were deleted. If you don't want that to really matter, you just, you could say that, like even here where we just got the 1, we got the ID back that we modified. You could say user successfully updated or so on and so forth. So we're going to do a .catch. Catch an error. Console.log that error just in case. I'm going to have a response status 500. JSON. The message says could not delete user. And everybody let me know when they get to this point, and then we'll try that. We'll try and erase somebody.
Here, db remove.
Quiet in here. He's chilling on his blanket with his mess of toys that he has that he inherited from the other dogs.
Nice.
Funny thing is he's small enough, he blends in with the toys. A lot of times you really got to look for him because he looks like one of the toys.
Oh man, we had a similar problem. Gus is a black dog. And we had him sitting on a black couch for a while. It's like, where'd he go? Where'd he go? And he's just like laying down on the couch. You just couldn't see him.
It's good stuff. We getting close?
I'm there.
All right. Let's try and delete somebody. Let's see. I'm ID 4, so I'm going to try and delete me. I'm going to duplicate this tab. We're going to make this a delete request, and all we have to do is send it to ID of 4. This requires no body on a delete request. All you got to do is send it to the URL here. So I'm on fire away. Let's see what happens. Bang. Ooh, I even got my message I put in. The user successfully deleted. So if I go back to my GET request, send, I'm gone. I'm not there anymore.
And then go to the GET request. And then send that. Nice. That worked.
And there's all 4. That's the CRUD operations done.
Nice.
We only have one method we didn't use, and that was the find by username.
Let's do that one.
Yep.
Well, that one is more or less there for this one here and this one. That's basically a middleware function more than anything else that we wrote in that database. And the reason why it's there is because we want to see if we can find a username before we allow somebody to try and post, so you don't get that error, like that SQLite error that you get when you try and put a username in that already exists. The end user from the front end will never see that error.
Right.
They'll just think, something happened. So you want to be able to check for that username. This is where you have to manually check for stuff. JavaScript doesn't do it for you. So we could write a middleware function to use that.
Let's do that.
Okay, we're going to write a middleware function here. We'll call this this function, we'll call validate user, and it's going to take in, I got to remember how to write one of these again. I just did it here. Let's see what I got. Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember if it was a callback or if I took it in. This is going to take in the request, response, and next. Okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to get the username from the request. We're going to call it, we'll set it up as a variable. We'll call it const user equals, or we'll call it username. Let's keep the naming right. Username equals request dot body dot username. Okay. And we're going to run an if statement. If, say if the, we'll call it not username. It means if the username is undefined, then we're going to send a response status of 404. Yeah, we'll call it 404, maybe 403. JSON. And this is if it, basically we're checking to see if the username is in there. So it's going to be a pretty valid, elaborate function that we're writing. So if the username doesn't exist, we're going to return a JSON message that says, message is going to say, please provide a username. Okay, then we're going to have, let's see, would it be an else if? I don't remember how I'm going to do this.
Seems to be what I saw on the Blevins.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how I want to do it. This is one of those things that you got to think about a little bit. So if, let's see, we're setting a username. Well, if this variable isn't there. Okay, here we go. I'm going to change the way this is worded. We're going to get rid of this. And then our else statement is going to do that. I'm going to set that equal to the request.body. Username. Okay, so we run through that one. We did an if and else there. Then after that, actually we could, let me think. Don't do it, don't copy what I just did. Let me go back here. Back to where we were. Else. We're gonna do our DB. Find by username. The username.
Find by username. That makes sense. Username. So if the username doesn't exist, please provide a username. Else DB find by username. Okay.
We're at this point?
Yep.
Now we got the dot then. We're going to get back a user object. Okay, if the user object exists, so in this dot then, if it's there, if it finds something, then we're going to send a response status of, we'll call this 404, I guess, JSON. This is going to be a message that says username already exists. So this is actually a successful response. We're saying, oh, we found a username in our database. Well, we don't want to find a username in this case. You know what I mean? It's got to be unique. So if it finds something, that means it's not unique. So we're going to return a message that says username already exists. Okay, so dot then, and then we can do a dot catch in here for just a regular error. It's going to be the error just in case something's happening with our database. This is where our database errors come from. Error, and then we're going to response.status. Do we even need to do it in here?
Maybe if there's a server error.
Well, I'm just thinking because we don't even need the dot catch in here.
No, because are we doing that technically?
We're doing it already up in the function above. Yeah, we don't need it here. So we got our dot then and our else statement. And I accidentally erased one of the closing brackets. Don't be like me, don't erase those. Okay, so we have our if and else running. So now we do an if else dot then response dot data set catches. So we'll run that. So if it passes all these and it goes through all this, then we should just be able to call next. I'm right.
Next. Gotcha.
Actually, let me change this up. I'm going to change this to an else if. Else if. I think I like this logic better. You know what? Let's just try it the other way first. And we're just going to check our code to make sure it doesn't pass. So we have this validate user. We're going to want to validate the user when we do a post in here. So let's go ahead and validate the user.
Okay, router post, router post. And then here, validate user.
I know when everybody's here, and then we'll try it and see if I got to change my logic a little bit.
And then here, what we're doing, oops, command Z.
Server still runs.
So now what we've done is that router post is to add a user and validate that user doesn't already exist.
Yep, that's what we're going to try. So first, I always like to try and hit my errors. So I'm going to try and create the post, and I'm going to try and create a post to John. So I'm going to try and add John. We know John's already there. So let's hit it and see what happens. Username already exists. It hit my error. Now let's make sure it didn't try and add him. Oh, wait, look, you see down here where I'm getting an error in my console?
Yeah.
I'm getting the SQLite constraint. Do you know why I'm getting that?
Because the name's already taken?
No, I shouldn't. It shouldn't even be going to the database.
Oh, okay.
For that. Users.username is still trying to add that username even exists. And I can tell you why. This is a glitch in our middleware. This is why we test everything and try and make it fail. What it's doing is my if-else statement here. It's running my if-else statement, but then it's still running this next call. It's still letting it pass. You see that? So we got to get it to where it's only gonna call next if it meets all these requirements. So that's where we're gonna do what I was originally getting ready to start doing. We're gonna make this an else if, and we're gonna just type in username. So this is an else if username does exist, then it's gonna run this. Let's see if I'm thinking right. Okay, if username doesn't exist, username does it. And then else, so you'll run the else if username does that, then then username exists. Well, it's supposed to stop on the response. So else, we'll call next in here, and we're going to try that. All right, so we're back up and running. So it's still trying to add it. We don't want it to do that. We don't want it to throw that error. So I'm going to go try it again. Everybody caught up to this point?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go try it again. Let's see if I do a post to John. Let's send that again. Username already exists. Didn't add it, and I did an error. It worked.
Nice.
So I stopped here. Now let's try and actually add a user. Let's try and put one in that doesn't exist. I'm not in there anymore, so I'll put my name back in. So we'll put in me. We want to make sure it's going to pass now when we know that it's not there. And I'm getting a username already exists. And it won't pass it. Why is he saying that username already exists? This is where we got to figure out our logic. Isn't this fun? Okay, so see that this is where we're going to do it. We're going to do it a little differently here. We're going to go back in here. And we're going to get rid of this else and the else if and our .then response. Okay, we're going to call another if statement in here. So we're going to say if user 0. If user 0 is there, we're going to run this message.
Then user.
Because that should return us a user array index of 0 should have something in it. And then if not, we'll call else and then next. So what was happening here is it returns an array. An array is a truthy object, even if it's empty.
Yes.
Okay, so it was passing the initial check here on our else if. that username existed, because username existed, even if it didn't exist, it returns an array of 0. So our .then was still running as successful because it was just returning an array with nothing in it. So that's why we put this if-else statement in our .then. Now we're going to check to see if user with the array index of 0 that's coming back, to see if there's something in there. And if there is something in there, then it's going to return this. If not, it should run next. So let's try this logic.
Can you scroll up just a teeny bit? I mean, so I can see the whole, like the ending brackets.
Down here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So I think I am off by a bracket now. I think, do I have it now?
You can see I even still have problems with this logic as far as checking everything and going through. This is stuff you got to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these, if you get it going right, save it and remember where it's at. So when you have to do this again, because there's a lot of things you're going to have to do, like to validate a user ID, you do that in almost every one of these commands. Like the validate user ID middleware that we wrote last week,
yeah,
you're going to use that function a lot. You might as well copy and paste it, because anytime you run any command that has :ID, you're going to want to have that for middleware.
Mm-hmm.
Just to verify if it even exists.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of those functions you wrote and you're going to reuse a lot. This validate user function, there's probably going to be a lot of uses for it. Some of the naming might change here or there, but once you nail down the chain of your if-else statements, and you can use ternary operators in here. I just didn't, for the simple fact it's easier to explain when people see if and else.
Yes.
As opposed to seeing a question mark and a colon, you know? So.
Can we add that middleware? You said that we'll reuse quite a bit to this file, just so we have it all in one place.
The validate user ID? Yeah, sure, we can do that. Let's make sure this one works. Let's try it again. Okay, so I'm sending Chris. I know Chris ain't there. Please work. Uh-oh. Cannot read property 0 of undefined. Okay, well, maybe it is undefined. Let's try doing it this way. We'll eventually get it to hit. Let's make sure it didn't show up. Okay, it didn't show up. Oh, I think we finally just got it. Maybe we didn't need the array. There it is. So this is the proper logic. So a user was not coming back as an array like I originally thought.
Okay, so here, get rid of the empty array. And then how did you validate that on Postman?
How did I figure out it worked?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, see how I have a user of Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go through it again. Let me just run a delete on, what user is that? ID 5. We'll just start over and I'll explain it, how we're checking our middleware. I'm going to send this delete just to get rid of it. Get, so we have our original 3. Okay, we know we have Denise, John, and Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to create a post. We're going to add a new user. So in our post to add a new user, where's my body object at? I'm going to try initially, I'm going to try and add a user that's there. I'm going to try and add John. All right. So if my middleware is working properly, I'm going to push send, and I'm going to get a message back that says username already exists. So let's do that. And my response.
Got it.
Username already exists.
Mm-hmm.
Now we could try something completely off the wall, like we wrote our middleware to do 3 things. It's going to check to see if we provided a username. It's going to see if the username already exists, or it's going to pass. So let's try doing this. Let's not send a username. Let's send password and teacher and see if we get that message. Please provide a username. So far, so now we're purposely erroring our middleware to make sure it's going to pass all the checks.
Gotcha.
So now let's go ahead and let's add our username. And we already know that if we have one that exists, it's working. And if we don't send one, it's working. So let's add one that doesn't exist. And make sure it's going to pass and move on to next, like it's supposed to. So we push send here. And I'm getting back a success response of an ID number. We'll go back to our GET request, and we're going to make sure. There it goes. So it did not post anything to the database till it passed all our checks like it's supposed to.
Okay.
So that's how I checked it with Postman. I basically purposely sent it a name that did exist to make sure I got my one error message that I wanted. And then I purposely sent it an object without a username field to make sure that went through.
Nice.
And that's the middleware, and that's where you have, like, you write those model functions. Like, you might never write an endpoint for some of these model functions, like the find by username, or sometimes even the find by ID. You know, you're writing those for your middleware purposes only, to manipulate, you know, to query the database to see if stuff's there, to check to see if it passes middleware. So our next function was, let me go find that project so I remember how it was written. That was Node API. Was that 2? See, this one's it. I don't see it. I think this is our router. Maybe it was 3.
It was 3. If we're talking about Wednesday's project, it was Node 3, because it's actually what I happen to be on right now.
Yeah, that's the function that we're going to be using, because that works pretty well. You might have to add a function to our database to get it to work, though. So let me go to user router. There it is right there. I'm just going to copy this whole thing over. We're going to copy that, and we're going to put it down here as another function.
Under validate user.
Validate user ID. Now, we're going to have to change some naming around. Obviously, we don't have it called user DB. It's just called DB.
Validate user ID.
And now we're going to have to add this function to our model, the get by ID function, in order for all this to work. So we'll go into our model. We got the find, insert, remove, find by username. We need one that's find by ID.
Can you go back and give me a chance to catch up?
Sure can. Let me get this in here, and we will back up right here.
Thank you. Get by ID. User. User. Oops. Here. Next.
Oh, you're so
Like that. Oops. Res. something wrong. Something functional. Equals user. Wait a minute. User. Rec. Not equals user. Next. Else. Yes. All right, I've got that. Thank you.
All right. Let's go into our model, and we're going to make our find by ID. Knowing everybody's here.
Function. Find. Alrighty, thank you.
All right. Find by ID. So we're going to return DB and I'm sorry, it's database. Okay, we did go to database. Database users. Where, because we have to search in here. And this is the beauty of destructuring again, because we named it ID. So we can do that. Matter of fact, we gotta make it look pretty like everybody else does. Have them spaces in there. Where ID, and then our last command, because when it finds the ID, we want it to stop, right? So what do we do to make it stop?
Next.
Not here. Like when we're searching through a database. What was that?
First?
That's right, first.
Okay.
So whenever it finds the very first one, stop and return.
Wait.
And let me know when everybody's got this one typed up.
Got it.
Is that everybody there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody's there. Let's go back into our user router. So we have this validate user ID. If you notice that we're setting a variable to the user object in here, or to the request object. We're giving it a user equal to user. So that user is an actual ID number. We can use that. So let's go back up here. Let's go to the very first one. We have this one right here. We need to validate an ID, right, for a put request. So let's put our validation in. User ID. But now that we're getting, see where this update request.params.id is?
Yeah.
We can change that now to request.user.
So DB update. So instead of doing params ID, we're doing request user.
Yeah, and where that's coming from is that's actually coming from our middleware, our validate user ID. If you look down here at our middleware, I am setting that variable right here in our if statement. So it's doing a get by params ID. If the ID is there, it's going to set that ID number to this request.user variable. And
okay.
I could be wrong, but I believe the reasoning behind this is that you don't want to, up here, like if it passes the middleware, Well, for one, it shouldn't run any of this other stuff if it doesn't pass the middleware. But let's say you put in an invalid ID number and it somehow does pass this. You don't want to use that ID number. You want to use the one that the middleware said. That's kind of what I guess what they're saying with that. So that's why we set it to request.user. So anywhere you have the ID that you're getting params ID, you can set it to that user object that you had down there. Now you don't have to do that, but it's there. We might as well use it. And we can do the same thing here. So let's put our validate user ID function in here. We got middleware. We can change this one to request.user. And now we have that middleware in place. And once everybody catches up, we're going to go try it.
You see how on line 47 now user isn't being used? Is that a problem?
No, that's just a parameter name. That just allows you to call the fat arrow function. I mean, you can get rid of that and just put this in here if you want. Does the same thing.
That's okay.
Just when I was writing it, I thought, in case it was there and I needed it. And I realized as I was writing it with the message. There's a lot of times when you're doing the responses, I actually made a response that says it's successfully deleted. A lot of times you just have JSON user, that comeback object, which just sends you a 1, basically, saying that it deleted 1 record. So I just went the other road with it. Like you can literally have, in the second half of this object, we can go, have a deleted records and have that as a literal string and have it taken user. That way. So then you can send a message to let them know how many records they deleted. So if you're deleting more than 1.
And that's user. So delete the records. Literal delete some.
I got something not saved in my model. What did I not save? I don't know, but we're going to save it just to be sure.
Now, is it model or modal? Because you've got modal written there, but I saw it in like the previous projects. It's
I think I've always seen it called modal. But
modal.
Yeah, modal model. As long as it's named something other than router, you're good. Something that makes sense. Like a lot of times you can call it users DB, users database, because that's what it's doing, is just talking to the users database. All right, everybody at this point?
Yep.
All right, let's go try it. So we're gonna go back to our postman, and let's see here. We had to delete for, let's do a get again real quick. Okay, we have an ID of 6. But there's no ID of 4. So let's try and delete 4 and see if it throws an error. Oh, I got a big error. What happened? Oh, boy. Let's go check it out. Let's see what it said. It did not like that. Get by IDs now. Oh, I know what I forgot to do. What are you not supposed to do?
Oh, we need to update it. Yeah.
Find by ID.
It's users modal.
Yeah, we got to export that function that we just made. So let's go try it now. And hit it. Oh, I still got an error. What was my error now?
I think you're calling it get by ID instead of find by
Find
ID.
by ID. Yep, you're right. So let's go here and let's do a. What did I name it in here? I named it find by ID. So in my user router, I called it in my middleware get by ID, and it's supposed to be find. I love them errors.
Function validate.
I forgot to change the naming because I just copied and pasted it over from the other project, and it was named get by ID. It needs to be find by ID. This had to match our database function.
Get ID. Here it is.
Get to find. Now let's try again. Ooh, invalid user ID. It worked.
Nice.
And so how did you kick up that message? By trying to delete something that didn't exist?
Correct. I went on get request. I tried to delete a user of 4. There's no 4 here. If you look, it automatically went to 6 because we've been adding and deleting. I just basically put in an ID number that wasn't there into the delete URL.
Delete users. Okay,
So let's try. Let's try our put request now. Let's see if that works. Put is by ID. Try to put a 5 to the username Denise.
I got an unable to edit user.
Yeah. Unable to edit user on which one?
I did like user 8 because I know I don't have.
Is that the message you were supposed to get?
Mm-hmm. Because that user doesn't exist.
Okay. So I got an invalid user ID here on the put request. So that's working. So let's try and give it some successful ones now. So we know that we're working on both of our endpoints that we needed an ID where it's unsuccessful. Let's give it a successful one. So I'm going to edit 6. Let's edit 6. And we'll give it the username. We'll stick with puppy again. And send. See if it goes through and is successful. I got a 0. I don't know what that means, but let's try it. It did not take it, but it gave me a successful message. Why did it do that? What is going on? All right. Let's go see why that happened. I gave it a successful user ID, but something happened to where it's not passing. And didn't throw an error either. So let's have a look at our validate user ID.
I get the same thing too, 0 for the response and nothing changed.
Okay, well, it's passing it is going to next. So the only thing I can think of is that our response.then user is not correct. So let's see what user looks like. We're going to see what user looks like in our middleware. So when we ping this again, we should get our console log in there. So let's send. Oh, wait, that was a get. Let's do the put. In the username of puppy, send. Getting a 0. Oh, did you see this? I got a whole object back.
So we would have to get the ID, right?
It would be user.id.
Okay, so function validate user. If user rec user equals user.id.
Yeah, because we're only validating an ID here. We could have done this up in our function, like up here where the request.user. We could have added the .id here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Since this middleware is only for the ID, I think it's better to do it in here. That's all we need out of it. We don't need to pass anything else forward.
So if that's the case, then always console log the user so that you know what you're getting back.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. So now we know that's fixed. Let's save it. And let me try and run that put one more time. Oh, I got a 1. Did it work? Yeah, and it worked. Nice.
Yep.
Okay. Let's try and delete 6 now. Make sure it works all the way on all the functions. Send. Success for delete. And look, my deleted records even showed up with the 1.
So how did you test the ad again? Where did you go to?
The put request.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did a put request on, like, right now, I'm sending a username of puppy to object 6. I know 6 doesn't exist anymore because I just erased it.
Mm-hmm.
If I push it for 6, I'll get invalid user ID. But now I do know 3 exists. 3 should be Gabriel. And I'm going to try and change his name to Puppy.
Okay.
So I'm going to send that one. And I got a successful 1. So if I do this GET request again to check it, wherever Gabriel's at right here on the ID of 3, that should say Puppy.
I got, when I tried users 3 put request, I got the message error, unable to edit user.
You got an unable to edit user on 3. What do you have in the JSON?
I had username.
What, Gus? You want to
Username
come back in here?
You had username what?
puppy. Username puppy.
All right, and you're getting, where's the error message in your code? Is it in here in the validate user ID?
Oh yeah, I kicked up an error. I didn't even notice. It says undefined bindings detected when compiling update. ID query update users set username.
Unidentified binding in this update function?
Mm-hmm.
That's a new one. And you got this error.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't even get the middleware error. Correct? This error you got labeled differently?
I didn't get invalid user ID.
So it's passing the middleware. So we got a problem with the update function then. Well, what could have changed there? That was working. Share your screen. Let's have a look at it. Because we are pretty much done. So we'll fix your error and then we'll call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this helped you all understand kind of how it flows.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, go up to your update function. It was the put request right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not passing because you're not calling the middleware. Where it says router.put and right after the ID, in between that and the homies, you got to call that middleware, validate user ID. And you need to call that on the delete one too. Anywhere you see the colon ID, you should have that.
That'd be nice if we copied the whole thing. So do that on the delete as well.
Yep. Put that in delete in the same spot.
Here.
Yep. And now save it and try it there.
Okay, and then go to Postman. And then,
You got a success of 1.
okay,
It says puppy.
nice. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. All right. Well, is that helpful for everybody?
Heck yeah.
Incredibly helpful.
All right. Any questions?
Can't believe I'm still awake now.